Chapter 1324. What a terrifying aura of death, the North Emperor immediately said, a cautious expression on his handsome face. What a terrifying aura of death, the North Emperor immediately said, a cautious expression on his handsome face. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and his expression involuntarily changed as he surveyed this land. For hundreds of millions of years, countless people have died in battle here, and their blood has all seeped into this land. This is a land of blood. Faceless grabbed a clump of soil, and his divine power surged, turning the soil and rocks into nothingness. In the end, only a grain of golden sand remained. Everyone's heart tightened. Faceless was at the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and his power was comparable to the early stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. However, there was still a grain of sand that hadn't been refined by him. Could this be level 9 godly metal? The North Emperor took the grain of sand from Faceless' hand and examined it closely. After a long while he said, "This grain of sand is extraordinary. Extremely extraordinary," the Stone Emperor said. He also grabbed a clump of soil, but after refining it this time, there was no golden sand left. He wasn't discouraged, and instead grabbed an even larger clump of soil to refine. This time, there were 2 grains of golden sand in his hand. Everyone grabbed their own clumps of soil to refine, and soon, everyone had 1 or 2 grains of golden sand in their hands. They began to examine them carefully. Ling Han was the same. Although this grain of sand didn't contain any energy, it gave him a feeling of majesty. It was as if it had once been a brick and tile of some supreme palace that had been destroyed and turned into sand. He took advantage of the time, when no one was paying attention, to send this grain of sand into the Black Tower for Notionless Saint to analyze. Who would have thought that the Notionless Saint would exclaim in astonishment after a single glance? Even his voice was trembling. Even though he was in the Black Tower, Ling Han could only hear some incoherent mutterings from the Notionless Saint. "Senior Notionless, what happened to you?" Ling Han asked. "I've reached heaven," Notionless Saint said in a baffling manner. Heaven? Reaching heaven in a grain of sand? This seemed like a joke, and it shouldn't have come from the mouth of a saint. "Senior, speak more clearly," Ling Han hurriedly said. However, the Notionless Saint was still spouting nonsense as if he had gone mad. He no longer bore the demeanor of a saint. Ling Han was speechless, but he also knew that this grain of sand was not simple. To be able to make a saint lose his composure like this, he must have a shocking background. Ling Han was very interested. He clenched his fist and heavily punched the ground. Dirt flew into the air. It looked very normal, but Ling Han frowned, because the damage caused by this punch was too small. Although the immortal realm was stable, he was already standing at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. A single punch from him would definitely be able to topple mountains and shatter rivers. How could he possibly blast a crater that was only 9 meters in diameter? Pung pung pung. He threw out 17 punches, and his divine sense spread out, seeping into the earth. He discovered that the reason why the destructive power of his punches was not great was because most of the power had been absorbed by something special in the earth. It must be the golden sands. The others also noticed that something was amiss and tried it out for themselves. Soon, they also revealed looks of astonishment. This golden sand was not simple at all. "What kind of place is this?" More people exclaimed in astonishment. This place was far too big. "Brat, hurry up and collect this sand, the more the better," the Notionless Saint said incoherently in the Black Tower. He was extremely excited. "Senior, what on earth is this?" Ling Han asked. "I don't know either," the Notionless Saint said excitedly. "However, I can confirm that if I had enough of this stuff, I would have been able to reach the medium extreme of the Genesis tier. No high extreme, or even consummate level." Although there was only a ball of light left, it was still shining brightly, as if his expression was changing. Ling Han was astonished. He immediately spread out his hands and began to collect the soil here. He didn't have time to refine it, so he just put it all into the Black Tower. In any case, there was enough space, so there was no shortage of space. Seeing him like this, the others seemed to have been inspired, and they also began to collect the soil. They were mighty prodigies. young king tiers of the current generation, yet they were all playing with soil. If word of this got out, they would definitely laugh themselves to death. But now, whether it was Qi Huangji Faceless, Yu Ying the Cloud Maiden, or even the descendants of the North Emperor and Stone Emperor, they were all having a great time. Some people had just arrived, and they had no idea what was going on. However, seeing that everyone was collecting soil, they naturally followed suit. This was herd mentality. Logically speaking, prodigies should have their own opinions. But what was the situation now? Even the 9 king tiers were collecting soil, so it had to be a treasure. All of a sudden, it was as if this place was busy with farming. Everyone was in full swing, and they were full of energy. However, it didn't take long before many people stopped. It wasn't that they didn't want to collect soil, but rather that their spatial spirit tool was limited, and they couldn't store it anymore. There was no other way, so they could only refine it as they collected it. In any case, no matter how large a piece of soil was, it would only produce a few grains of golden sand after being refined, so they didn't have to worry about whether their spatial spirit tool would be enough. Ling Han quickly discovered that it was almost impossible to collect all the golden sand in this place in one go, because there was far too much soil here that contained golden sand. Not only was this plain boundlessly vast, but it was also immeasurably deep underground. It was practically inexhaustible. He decided to stop and began to speculate. What if this golden sand has a source? Not only him, but the others also raised their heads, their eyes sparkling. Perhaps not everyone knew the true value of this golden sand, but even an idiot could guess that this golden sand was extraordinary. There might be a great opportunity hidden in this plain, Yi Zichen said. The mountain river forest is above here, and so is the nearby Sun Moon Valley. It would be a joke to say that the formation of these two places had nothing to do with this place. Perhaps we can unravel the secrets of the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley here. Everyone became excited. The mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley only opened once every 70,000 years, and if they could unravel their secrets here, wouldn't they be able to enjoy the good fortune of heaven and earth? Ling Han and the other king tiers were even more clear. This was celestial qi, and it could allow them to comprehend the regulations of the two realms. They would truly be invincible among those at the same cultivation level. Everyone advanced. With over 10,000 people scattered here, it was practically like spilling a bowl of water into a lake, inconspicuous. However, as the news spread, not only would those who had left previously return, but even more people would come here to explore the secrets of this plain. Boom! The shockwaves of a battle suddenly traveled over from the distance, but it quickly ended. Ling Han and the others exchanged a look. They could all guess that it had to be the 4 Eternal River tier elites who had left previously. Although the battle ended very quickly, it had still taken at least a few breaths' time. What did this mean? Those 4 had encountered an Eternal River tier opponent again. This place was dangerous. Chapter 1325. Who would have thought that there would be such a place in this galaxy? The Stone Emperor laughed loudly. He formed a hand seal, and in a short while, a miniature carriage sped over from behind. Rather than calling it a carriage, it was more like an ox carriage. After all, it was a purple gold metal ox. This was the Stone Emperor's extremely impressive carriage. The carriage and the mount were both made from a piece of saintly material, and they were indescribably extravagant. Everyone, there's no time to talk. Let's get on the carriage. The Stone Emperor leaped onto the carriage first. His figure also shrank during this process, and he became a 3-inch man. Can't you enlarge the carriage? The North Emperor asked in displeasure. This is saintly material, and I can't control it. The Stone Emperor shrugged and said, Are you guys going or not? Everyone looked at each other before leaping onto the carriage. Their figures naturally shrank as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting on the carriage, but stepping on it. Stepping on a saint tool. No 2 saint tools. Wasn't that seeking death? Especially since that purple gold metal ox was already slightly intelligent. Once it truly awakened its consciousness, it would become a saint. Who would dare to step on its head? Fortunately, it was a piece of cake for immortals to temporarily shrink their bodies. Everyone shrank to a 3-inch man, and then stood on the carriage. In reality, this was probably a chariot. The carriage didn't have a roof, and its exterior was engraved with formation patterns, exuding an ancient and heavy aura. Aside from the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor, there were only Ling Han, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Faceless, Yang Lin, Yuing, the Cloud Maiden, and Zhuo Quan. No one else was qualified to board. Although Yuing didn't make it into the ranks of the 9 kings, her strength was clear for all to see. Meanwhile, Zhuo Quan had benefited from the Cloud Maiden. Otherwise, his heavenly body tier cultivation alone wouldn't have been enough to make the Stone Emperor look at him differently. Qi Huangji and the others naturally couldn't board the carriage. After all, they belonged to opposing forces, and it was already very restrained that they hadn't started fighting. However, they were sure that this kind of peace wouldn't be maintained for long. The chariot sped forward at an extremely fast speed. They quickly widened the distance between them and the troops behind them. They truly left them in the dust. Even king tiers like Qi Huangji and Tuobadong couldn't catch up. However, after walking for at least half a day, they were still in an empty plain. As far as the eye could see, there was only emptiness everywhere. There was no end at all. No one was in a hurry. The bigger this underground world was, the more shocking the secrets it contained. Get in the chariot suddenly jolted as if it had hit something and almost overturned. Fortunately, this was a steed forged from saintly material, so it was incredibly stable. It only jolted for a moment before the carriage regained its stability. But what on earth did he hit? One had to realize that ordinary items would be directly smashed into smithereens by that purple gold bull's ramming. That was saintly material that was almost on the verge of attaining spirit. Even if the might of its attack hadn't reached the saint level, it would at least be on par with the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. The Stone Emperor stopped the chariot, and everyone else retreated. There was a protrusion on the originally empty plain. The war chariot had run over that protrusion, causing the bumps. "There's blood," the North Emperor said gravely. Everyone focused their gazes and saw that there was a hole in the protrusion. Blood gushed out, and a strong stench immediately wafted over. It was as if it were an old corpse that had been rotting for several hundred years. Crack. A crack instantly appeared in the ground. Then a second crack appeared, and a third crack appeared. Like a spiderweb, the earth trembled slightly. Pung! A large hand suddenly reached out from the ground. Shockingly, this hand was formed from a large number of corpses. There was a corpse on this hand that had its stomach split open, and black pus and blood were currently flowing out. A disgusting stench exuded from this corpse. This large hand pushed off the ground, allowing its entire body to break out of the ground. Instantly, an incredibly disgusting evil creature appeared. Just like the evil creature that had been killed by the 4 Eternal River tier elites, this was also at the Eternal River tier. Although it was an evil creature, the aura it exuded was incredibly powerful. It was as if it were an evil lord. This evil creature naturally arrived at the chariot as well. Everyone immediately sucked in a deep breath. Instantly, a fierce gust of wind howled, forming a powerful suction force. Thankfully, this was an inhale, and not an exhale. Otherwise, if this thing exhaled a puff of foul air, most people would probably directly faint. The wind howled, yet everyone on the chariot remained motionless. This chariot was no ordinary chariot. Rather, it was forged from 2 pieces of saintly material. How could an Eternal River tier cultivator move it? "Die," the Stone Emperor said with a humph. He reached out and patted the edge of the chariot. Instantly, numerous formation patterns lit up, intertwining to form a dazzling circle of light. The purple gold bull opened its mouth and pu! A streak of purple light shot out, shooting toward the evil creature. This streak of light was incredibly fast, and with a pu, it struck the evil creature's chest, blasting a hole into it. However, this evil creature wasn't severely wounded. Instead, it roared in fury and swatted its massive paw at the chariot. Wang! The massive paw reached them, yet the chariot raised a barrier of light, blocking this paw. Meanwhile, everyone on the chariot could clearly see that the massive paw was formed from 17 corpses. Some of them were missing heads, while others were missing limbs. Dark red pus and blood flowed from their bodies, and it was an extremely disgusting sight. If it weren't for this chariot, perhaps everyone here apart from the Stone Emperor would have been wiped out with a single strike. However, this chariot provided them with rock-solid protection. The purple-gold bull spat out another streak of light, and it unleashed a flurry of attacks at the evil creature. After being wounded, the evil creature became more and more violent. It was filled with an aggressive nature, and it continued to attack the chariot. It had no intelligence, and under the bombardment of the purple-gold bull's attacks, it was injured again and again. However, it still continued to attack, showing no signs of retreating. Although the 4 Eternal River Tier elites quickly dealt with it, that was only because the Wide Travel Monk King and the others were too powerful. Although this chariot was more extraordinary in theory, the person controlling it was only at the Heavenly Body tier, so the might it could unleash was much weaker. After being wounded again and again, the evil creature was finally blasted into pieces, and only then was it completely destroyed. The Stone Emperor hurriedly drove the chariot away. The Stone Emperor hurriedly drove the carriage away. The stench of rot was truly too unbearable. As they continued onward, they were attacked by a few more evil creatures. Some of them were at the Eternal River tier, while the others were at the Sun Moon tier. However, these evil creatures were formed from a dozen or so corpses, and they didn't even have a human form. They were just slightly larger balls of flesh. After traveling for about a day, a thick fog suddenly appeared in front of them. No matter how powerful one's vision was, they couldn't see through it. The Stone Emperor stopped the chariot, and everyone looked hesitant. Should they continue onward? This place was incredibly strange, and if they continued onward, they might encounter greater danger. As long as there aren't any Genesis tier cultivators alive, this chariot will be able to stop them, the Stone Emperor said confidently. Everyone looked at each other, and then slowly nodded. Onward. Chapter 1326. The chariot slowly moved, and entered into this thick fog. This fog was really extraordinarily thick. They were standing on the chariot, and if it wasn't for the fact that the chariot itself formed a defensive circle that prevented the fog from invading, they probably wouldn't even be able to see each other. Ling Han grabbed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's hand. If some terrifying being really appeared here, he would send his wife into the Black Tower at the first instant. As for the others, that would depend on the situation. After all, they only appreciated each other, and didn't really have any friendship. The chariot advanced, the wheels rolling, and there was a loud sound of rolling earth. This was the strength of saintly material. Ling Han looked ahead, but no matter how wide he opened his eyes, even if he activated the Eye of Truth, it was useless. There was still a thick fog ahead, as if it would last forever. But as he walked, the path ahead suddenly widened, and a courtyard appeared. A youth was practicing his sword. He was clearly only 13 or 14 years old, but the aura he exuded had shockingly reached the Mountain River tier. So shocking, he had already advanced into the Mountain River tier at such a young age. No. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He was clearly walking in the fog, so how did he suddenly arrive in a courtyard? And a youth appeared. Where were the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and the others? Ling Han hurriedly looked around, but found that the chariot was nowhere to be seen, and there was no sign of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the Stone Emperor, and the others. And when he shook his head and looked around, he saw that the youth had also stopped practicing his sword, and was looking left and right, his movements exactly the same as his. Could it be that he was that youth? Ling Han raised his hand, and the youth also raised his hand, his expression filled with confusion. Could it be that my spirit had left my body? Ling Han shivered, and was suddenly pulled forward by a great force, crashing towards the youth. But the youth seemed to be completely unaware, and still stood there, without the slightest intention of dodging. The two of them collided, but neither of them fell. Instead, Ling Han's whole body was like water, merging into the youth's body. At this moment, he and the youth completely merged into one. No, it was not a fusion. Apart from a name, this young man had no other memories. It was an empty space. It should be said that his soul had entered this body. His consciousness was a little blurry, and two names kept appearing in his mind. One was Ling Han, and the other was Ding Zizhen. Who the hell am I? Ling Han was a little confused. His own memories were quickly fading, and the only thing left in his mind was that his name was Ding Zizhen. He didn't know anything else. He gritted his teeth. He was Ling Han. This fog was an illusory formation, and it had unknowingly affected his mind. He entered the Black Tower. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, yet he discovered that there was no Black Tower in his body. It was as if he had really become Ding Zizhen. What's going on? I'm not Ding Zizhen. I'm Ling Han. Ling Han shouted loudly in his body, reminding himself that not having the Black Tower was his biggest weakness. Now that he had grasped onto it, he had not lost his original intention. Ding Zizhen. A few youths walked into the courtyard. It's time to go to the clan competition. Hehe, just obediently admit defeat. Otherwise, we'll beat you until you can't cultivate for another 3 months. Hurry up and catch up. These youths were all 1 or 2 years older than him, and their strength was also slightly higher. Ling Han discovered that his cultivation level was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, while his opponents were at least in the medium extreme. In fact, there were even some in the high extreme and consummate level. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He had the power of 6 stars, and he had even completed his regulations, so his battle prowess should be able to break through to 6 stars. As these youths left, they passed through halls and pavilions. This place was ridiculously large, and after walking for a long time, they finally arrived at a training ground. There were already many people waiting here, young and old, male and female. Everyone's strength was also different. There were Mountain River tier, Sun-Moon tier, and Heavenly Body tier. The weakest was still in the Shattering Void tier. That was an infant currently being held in his arms. Gasp! Wasn't he born at the Shattering Void tier? What kind of shitty place was this? He was born close to immortals. And what shocked Ling Han even more was that he saw some people occasionally flow out of the Milky Way. They were definitely elites of the Eternal River tier. Yet like the others, they stayed obediently in the crowd. At the end of the training ground was a tall platform, and there were a few people sitting on it. All of their faces were obscured by mist, and they appeared very mysterious. With a single glance, Ling Han felt as if his divine sense was about to be torn apart. Too powerful. Any one of these people could definitely cover the sky with a single hand, shatter stars with a flick of their fingers, and destroy a galaxy with a single breath. Saints. Even Eternal River tiers could only stand by the side of the training ground. So the people sitting high above definitely had to be far superior in status to Eternal River tier. If they weren't saints, what could they be? Moreover, saints were divided into 4 levels, and these people were definitely not as simple as small saints. In fact, they could be great saints or saint kings. The Ding clan's year-end tournament began. As one person shouted, pairs of people entered the training ground and began to battle. The youngest was only 10 years old, yet shockingly also had a cultivation level at the low extreme of the Mountain River tier. This won exclamations of surprise and admiration from the spectators. As expected of Ding Yaolong, the 77th direct descendant of the Grand Ancestor. His ancestral blood is extremely pure, and he's only 10 years old, yet he's already so powerful. In the future, he'll definitely become another influential figure of our Ding clan. This youth was very powerful. He was clearly only at the low extreme of the Mountain River tier, yet he could battle against cultivators at the high extreme. In fact, after using some kind of secret technique, he was even able to defeat an opponent at the early stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. 1,000 years of time. Who would have thought that Yaolong's talent would actually be so powerful? He can already use the power of time at this cultivation level. The Ding clan is truly fortunate. On the tall platform, several incredibly powerful beings all nodded in agreement, not holding back their praise. Ding Yaolong left the training ground filled with praise. After a few more battles, it was Ling Han's turn. Or rather, it was Ding Zizhen's turn. His opponent was also at the low extreme, but his cultivation level was slightly higher than his. The difference between the early stage and the middle stage was that he was one of the youths who had challenged Ling Han just then. Surrender obediently. his opponent said as he launched an attack at Ling Han. Ling Han counterattacked. Yet he suddenly discovered that he had truly become a different person. His body no longer possessed powerful defenses, and his power hadn't surpassed 6 stars either. All of the secret techniques that he had mastered had disappeared. Right now, he only possessed the power of the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Moreover, he hadn't surpassed even 1 star. Pung! After barely dodging a few attacks, Ling Han was sent flying by a kick from his opponent. When he was sent flying, his opponent even mouthed the words trash, his expression filled with disdain. Ling Han landed on the ground. He wanted to crawl to his feet and continue fighting, yet a wave of intense pain assaulted him. He was unable to bear it, and he instantly fainted. Ugh! When he suddenly regained consciousness, he heard this kind of exclamation ringing out from all around him. He returned to his chariot. His surroundings were still shrouded in thick fog, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Stone Emperor, North Emperor, and the others were all present. Not a single one of them was missing. So strange. Chapter 13:28. The chariot continued onward, and dreams continued to assault him. This was Ding Zixian's path of growth, yet it was only marked by the end-of-year competition every year. This was probably his deepest and most painful memory. Ding Yaolong was still dazzling, and he quickly advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. His ranking in the clan competition also rose higher and higher. Meanwhile, Ding Zixian was still at the bottom, and he was still mocked and ridiculed by his clansmen every time. Year after year, when Ding Yaolong turned 16, he no longer participated in the clan competition because he had advanced to the Heavenly Body tier. The Ding clan had a rule that Heavenly Body tier elites couldn't participate in this kind of competition. However, he was still dazzling, and many young women in the clan liked him. Among them was a girl that Ding Zixian had a crush on. Ding Yaolong was very playful, and he didn't reject any of the beauties in the clan. Soon many of them became pregnant. However, he didn't plan to marry any of them. After all, he was the star of the Ding clan, so he had to marry someone of equal status. As for these women in the clan, he was just playing with them. The girl that Ding Zixian liked also became pregnant. After being rejected, she chose to end her life. This made Ding Zixian furious, and he went to fight Ding Yaolong. However, he didn't even get to see Ding Yaolong's face before he was beaten black and blue by Ding Yaolong's followers. He almost died. This caused him to lie in bed for a whole half a year before he recovered. After his injuries recovered, Ding Zixian left the clan and began to travel the world. He knew that if he stayed in the clan, he would never be able to surpass Ding Yaolong. Thousands, tens of thousands of years passed, and Ding Zixian was still a piece of trash. His cultivation level only rose from the early stage of the low extreme to the middle stage, and he gradually became middle-aged. Even in the low extreme, he only had a lifespan of 100,000 years. However, at this moment, Ding Zixian's luck finally changed. He followed a group of people to explore an ancient site. The journey was filled with dangers, and when he was the only one left, he finally obtained a divine pill. After taking the divine pill, he not only obtained an extra lifespan, but also improved his physique and talent. This was a complete transformation. Ding Zixian had been severely injured when he was still in his mother's womb. Thus, when he was born, he was only in the spiritual ocean tier. Unlike the other clansmen who were born in the shattering void tier, this was a congenital deficiency that practically cut off his path of cultivation. Even when he advanced into the immortal level, he had to rely on a powerful figure of the clan to forcefully raise his cultivation level. However, after consuming this elixir, he made up for his innate deficiency and started to rise. His previous efforts had transformed into a steady accumulation. In a mere 10 years, he had risen from the middle stage of the low extreme to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. However, his progress didn't slow down because of this. Another 100 years passed, and Ding Zixian advanced to the Heavenly Body tier. After another 1,000 years, he became an Eternal River tier elite. At this point, Ding Zixian could still be considered a prodigy, even if he were to take into account the tens of thousands of years that he had spent here into account. Furthermore, He was a top-tier prodigy. It had only been 50,000 years, and he had reached the eternal river tier. But this was not the most exaggerated thing. Another 10,000 years passed, and he became a sage. Hissed the Stone Emperor, and the others once again awoke from their dreams. All of them wore expressions of intense astonishment. In the dream, Ding Zizhen had left his clan a long time ago. As such, they had no idea what cultivation level Ding Yaolong, a super genius, had reached in the end. However, he had become a saint in just 60,000 years. This was unparalleled in the world. My father was born from a heavenly cloud rock, the Stone Emperor said solemnly. He was nurtured by heaven and earth for close to 10 billion years, before developing intelligence. After that, he used another 200 million years to finally advance to the Genesis tier. My master achieved Tao in 300 million years, the North Emperor said. With this comparison, it was clear that Ding Zizhen was a freak. Could it be that a saint had once appeared in our galaxy, and he died here? Or perhaps he set up some kind of trap here, and that's why the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley exist? Filled with doubt and anticipation, they continued forward and entered the dream again. After Ding Zizhen reached the Saint King tier, he returned to the Ding clan and challenged Ding Yaolong again. This time, he was no longer Ding Yaolong's follower, and he finally clashed with Ding Yaolong. The two of them battled, and they both unleashed their mystical techniques. However, Ding Yaolong's secret technique of time instantly overwhelmed Ding Zizhen. This was despite the fact that he had also grasped such a terrifying technique. In fact, his body was corroded by the passage of time, and he had lost at least hundreds of millions of years of lifespan. Ding Zizhen was powerful, but Ding Yaolong was the true king tier. However, even though Ding Zizhen suffered a crushing defeat in this battle, he also received the attention of his clan. He was heavily nurtured, and a marriage was arranged for him. The bride's clan was extremely powerful, and they could rival the Ding clan. Moreover, his fiancée was also a prodigy. The two clans agreed that when Ding Zizhen advanced one step further, they would allow him to marry. Advance one step further? Everyone came to their senses again, and they looked at each other. They were all so shocked that they couldn't speak. Ding Zizhen was already a Saint King, so how could he advance one step further? However, Ling Han was completely sure. The Ding clan was a force of the celestial realm, so it was natural that elites above the Genesis tier would appear in their ranks. Moreover, they were born at the Shattering Void tier, and advancing to the immortal level in a few years. This was also acceptable. After all, Hunyou was even more astonishing. She had become a saint in 5 years. Everyone hurriedly continued to drive. They wanted to know whether Ding Zizhen had advanced or not, and what cultivation level was after becoming a saint. This time, even a prodigy like Ding Zizhen failed to advance even after a long time. Ding Yaolong was even more talented, but he also fell into silence. These two people were now known as the twin dragons of the Ding clan. They represented the future of the Ding clan. After over 1 billion years, Ding Yaolong was the first to break through, and after another 30 million years, Ding Zizhen also advanced to a whole new level. Severing mundane tier. This was the cheer of the members of the Ding clan in their dreams. In a mere 30 million years, the Ding clan had produced 2 severing mundane tier grand elders, causing the strength of the Ding clan to improve greatly. The severing mundane tier was divided into 4 minor levels, which were the low extreme, medium extreme, high extreme, and consummate level. It was said that one had to sever their mortal thoughts, and this was done a total of 4 times. Only after severing their mortal thoughts would they be able to accumulate celestial qi, live as long as heaven and earth, and wither with the universe. This time, Ding Zizhen was in complete seclusion. After finally reaching the severing mundane tier, he came out of seclusion to travel the world. This was his single life before he got married. After that, he would stay in the clan and shoulder the heavy responsibility of an ancestor. However, while he was traveling, he coincidentally encountered a woman, and the two of them fell in love at first sight. However, Ding Zizhen's fiancée was renowned for her domineering nature, so Ding Zizhen didn't dare to bring her back to the Ding clan. Instead, they simply stayed together. They stayed together for over 30,000 years. In the end, Ding Zizhen didn't return to the Ding clan. Instead, he chose to conceal his identity and retreated to the mountains with his beloved woman, enjoying the tranquil scenery. After another 40,000 years, his wife gave birth to a daughter for him, and she named her Ding Ling. However, it was at this time that his fiancée finally found him. She discovered that he had broken his engagement, married another woman, and had given birth to a daughter. She naturally flew into a rage, and while Ding Zizhen was away, she personally killed his wife and daughter. Everyone woke up again, and tears streamed down their faces. This wasn't because of their emotions, but rather because they were affected by Ding Zizhen. They couldn't help but feel great sorrow and pain, and it was as if their hearts were about to be torn apart. Chapter 1329. Was this Ding Zizhen's lingering resentment? Above saints, the severing mundane tear, and the lingering resentment he had left behind hadn't dissipated even after billions of years. Now it reappeared one after another. Saints aren't the strongest. Apart from Ling Han, everyone else was trembling. This completely destroyed their preconceived notions, and they couldn't accept it. Saints were the strongest beings in this universe, and only saints could defeat saints. Was this fake? Was this something that Ding Zizhen had made up? Even the Stone Emperor and the North Emperor couldn't come to a conclusion. After all, if they accepted this view, then the entire order of martial art would have to be reconstructed. Only Ling Han's heart was firm. This was because he already knew that there was a celestial realm above the immortal realm. It belonged to this realm, yet it was also higher than this realm. Hold on. If the immortal realm had a celestial realm, then wouldn't the netherworld have a demonic realm or something? No, if one wanted to enter the celestial realm, they needed to fuse the regulations of the two realms. In other words, they needed to be both saints and demon masters. Since that was the case, then the place that was blasted open should be the same. Regardless of whether it was the great elites of the netherworld or the immortal realm, they would ultimately have to enter the celestial realm. Celestial Qi contained the regulations of both the immortal realm and the netherworld. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. It was as if he had discovered an important point, but he couldn't grasp it no matter how hard he tried. This made him feel incredibly frustrated. What happened after that? Everyone wanted to know more, so they continued to drive the chariot to enter the dreamscape again. Sure enough, the chariot only advanced for a short distance before the dreamscape came again. Ding Zizhen returned, and found that his wife and daughter had died. He was naturally in great grief, and a rain of blood fell from the sky. The entire galaxy dimmed, and even the sun was extinguished by the rain of blood. The entire galaxy became a dead star. Was this the power of a saint? There was no targeting at all. He merely cried, and an entire galaxy became a graveyard. Ding Zizhen returned to his hometown and killed his fiancée's clan. He personally killed her and obtained a treasure from her clan. He brought it back to the grave of his wife and daughter. However, he was also pursued by two major clans. In order to repair their relationship with the other clan, the Ding clan sent Ding Yaolong to pursue him. In the bloody battle, Ding Zizhen was severely injured and suffered an incurable Dao injury. Although he had managed to escape, he did not have long to live. He buried himself and slept with his dead wife forever. But he used the treasure he brought from his fiancée's house on his daughter. After a few years, his daughter's soul would be reunited, and she would have a chance at reincarnation. Whoosh! Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. In their dreams, they had witnessed the final battle between Ding Yaolong and Ding Zizhen. It had been far too terrifying. A casual gust of wind had blown past, and many large planets had been destroyed. Countless living beings had been killed in an instant. Even saints don't have such power, the North Emperor said resolutely. Although my master is only a small saint, even a saint king would need to unleash a powerful technique to destroy a planet. Just a single shockwave from the battle between the two of them caused a star that was boundlessly far away to collapse. This is definitely not something that a saint king can do, the Stone Emperor said. Everyone nodded slowly. Now they could confirm that there was indeed another cultivation level above Saint Tier, and that was the severing mundane tier. However, according to Ding Zixian's dream, there was a considerable number of severing mundane tier elites in his hometown. Just the Ding clan alone had around 10, and his fiancée's clan also had around this number. This was far too terrifying, wasn't it? Even in a galaxy, there would only be one saint at most. However, their clan actually had around 10 beings above saint tier? What kind of place was that? Celestial realm? Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Ding Zixian had come from the celestial realm, and that was why there were so many elites there. Moreover, judging from the pyramid of elites, severing mundane tiers definitely couldn't be the strongest force in the celestial realm. Otherwise, it would be far too heaven-defying for a clan to have around 10 top-notch elites. Since you've all come, it means that my daughter is about to complete her soul gathering. A voice suddenly traveled over. Everyone felt that this voice was indescribably familiar. It was Ding Zixian. In their dreams, they had all been Ding Zixian, so they were naturally extremely familiar with this voice. Complete the final step for me and help my daughter reincarnate. In return, you can obtain a celestial technique that I've left behind. Its name is Tide of the Ages, Ding Zixian said. This wasn't a voice, but rather a divine sense that was transmitted directly into their minds. This was an obsession that Ding Zixian had left behind countless years ago, and it wouldn't dissipate until his daughter was saved. Instantly, everyone was filled with intense excitement. Celestial technique, Tide of the Ages. Wasn't that a secret technique that Ding Yaolong had once used? It was a secret technique of the Ding clan that could instantly cause time to flow by 10 million times, causing attacks and living beings to age. This could be said to be one of the most top-notch defensive techniques, as well as the most terrifying offensive technique. In the past, Ding Yaolong had relied on this secret technique to surpass 2 minor levels and defeat his opponent. At that time, he hadn't even reached the pinnacle level, yet he had surpassed 8 stars. This was inconceivable. Theoretically speaking, power that surpassed 6 stars could only be obtained after advancing to the pinnacle level. Once one advanced to a higher major level, their power would fall back to 6 stars. No, this was a secret technique, not power. The two did not conflict with each other. They definitely had to obtain it. All of a sudden, everyone began to feel enmity toward each other. Who wouldn't want such a secret technique for themselves? However, Ling Han said, "Why don't we first find the location of this senior Ding's beloved daughter?" Since Ding Zixian was willing to give them such astonishing benefits, reincarnation wouldn't be simple either. It was too early to start internal strife at this time. Everyone here was a king tier. Aside from Zuoquan and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, their self-control was naturally top-notch. Very soon they all nodded, suppressing their greed. There was no rush. The chariot advanced again, but they didn't enter the dreamland again. Ding Zixian had already told them everything that he wanted them to understand. Moreover, they also learned some details. For example, why the mountain river forest and Sun Moon Valley were separated by over 30,000 and 40,000 years. That was because Ding Zixian and his beloved wife had been in love for over 30,000 years before marrying, and then gave birth to a daughter after over 40,000 years. This was also a part of his obsession. Why did there be celestial qi? That was because Ding Zixian came from the celestial realm. In fact, he was even a celestial. He had persisted for millions of years, all for the sake of his beloved daughter. However, were the evil beings born here also related to Ding Zixian? That should be the case. This was the two-realm battlefield, where blood, dead souls, and corpses intertwined. Added with Ding Zixian's severing mundane tier will, it didn't seem strange that some eternal river tier evil beings were born. At least the golden sand was possibly formed from Ding Zixian's flesh and blood, and it was imprinted with the will of a celestial's martial art. Naturally, even saints would be stunned. However, since they could enter the dreamland, the 4 eternal river tier elites ahead of them should have also obtained the same information. Quick! Their eyes lit up, and they hurriedly urged the Stone Emperor to speed up the chariot. Hong long long the chariot rolled over. There were almost no opponents below saints, and it was unstoppable. After about a day, the fog dissipated, and a mountain appeared in front of them. It was as if it had been forcibly cut out by someone, and it was a very regular rectangular shape. That's not a mountain, but a coffin. Chapter 1330. The mist dissipated, revealing a coffin that was as large as a mountain. Everyone wasn't surprised by this. After all, they had entered the dream, and knew that Ding Zizhen had buried his beloved daughter. Moreover, they had come here to help Ding Ling reincarnate. If the dead weren't buried in a coffin, where would they be buried? However, this coffin was far too large. It was 3,000 meters tall and 3,000 meters long. People would definitely believe it if they said that it was a mountain. There were 4 people standing on the other side of the coffin. They were standing some distance away from each other, but each of them exuded an incredibly powerful aura. It was as if they were the center of the universe wherever they stood. The Wind Rider Heavenly King, the Wide Travel Monk King, the Pale-Faced Scholar, and the Wolf-Headed Brawny Man were 4 Eternal River tier elites. Sure enough, they had set out earlier, so they naturally arrived first. More importantly, they were also quite courageous. After all, not everyone dared to enter that dream repeatedly. What if they never woke up? Their divine sense would leave their body, and their physical body would slowly dry up. In the end, they would die. Now that we're here, let's rely on our own abilities. Little Han, come to the Universal Dao Galaxy to play when you're free, the Stone Emperor said. Oh, that's right. In another 100 years or so, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy of the Myriad Directions Galaxy will be recruiting students. The prodigies of the hundreds of galaxies will all gather, and they'll compete for a mere 100 spots. I hope that you'll be able to join them at that time. The North Emperor also smiled at Ling Han. He was very fond of Ling Han. Even though one of them was the son of a saint, while the other was the disciple of a saint, their chances of becoming a saint in the future were infinitely close to 0. Eternal River tier wasn't difficult, but becoming a saint was practically impossible. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more difficult it was for the older generation to produce a successor that could rival their own, let alone surpass them. Meanwhile, Ling Han had a very high chance of becoming a saint. Thus, even with their status, the two of them were still very cordial toward Ling Han. They didn't put on the airs of heavenly body tier elites, nor did they reveal the arrogance of descendants of saints. They were purposefully lowering themselves. Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Ling Han looked confused. The Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was founded by the Star Sand Saint. He's a great saint, and in the 10 billion years that the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy has been founded, a total of 8 saints have emerged from it, the North Emperor explained. 9 is the limit. Even the Star Sand Saint has said that he won't take any more disciples after taking in 1 more personal disciple. This is because he can't possibly produce a 10th saint. Thus, all of the prodigies are racking their brains to enter the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy and become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint. They want to become his 9th disciple and become a saint, the Stone Emperor continued. Yang Lin, the Cloud Maiden, and Yuing all heard it clearly, and they all looked tempted. Great sages Ijbi Yinshi and Sage Qinghai were also sages, but they were just minor sages. Although they were strong enough to look down on the world, compared to great sages, they were like the difference between heaven and earth. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't let go of their pride, it was likely that Bi Yinshi and Qinghai Saint would be willing to become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint. Perhaps they would have a chance to advance to the medium saint tier. Otherwise, they would be stuck at the small saint tier for the rest of their lives. There was nothing that could be done. At this level, cultivation techniques had long since been severed, and martial arts techniques had also reached the limit. If they encountered any problems, they could only solve them by themselves. There was no one to ask for help, and even if they had a lifespan of 1 billion years, it would still be exhausted. If they could become a disciple of the Star Sand Saint, then they would truly soar into the sky. Ling Han nodded slowly and said, "All right, I'll definitely go to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy within 100 years. Then we'll meet again at that time." The Stone Emperor laughed loudly and said, "However, I won't let you have this opportunity." He steered the chariot and flew toward the top of the ancient coffin. A chariot of this level naturally possessed the ability to fly. Possessing this chariot was his greatest source of confidence. Even if 4 Eternal River tier elites attacked him, he wouldn't be afraid. Xiao. The chariot reached the top of the ancient coffin, and then disappeared. Ling Han and the others also spread out, searching for the secrets of this ancient coffin from different angles. This dead person was definitely inside the coffin, and if they wanted to revive the dead, they naturally had to bring the person out of the coffin. Thus, the first step was to find out how to open the coffin, or rather, how to enter it. Ling Han naturally followed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They walked around the ancient coffin, and saw that there were densely packed symbols on the coffin's body. They looked a bit like formation patterns, and also a bit like divine patterns formed by the will of martial art. However, after walking around the coffin, they didn't find any clues to open the coffin or enter it. Could it be at the top? Ling Han wanted to climb up. In this strange place, he still didn't have the ability to leap 3,000 meters and jump onto the top of the ancient coffin. However, as long as he borrowed some strength from the coffin's body, climbing up would be a piece of cake. However, when he leaped up high and was just about to step onto the coffin's body, a powerful chill rose up in his heart. It was as if he would be consigned to eternal damnation if he kicked out. He forcibly retracted his foot, and his body landed. Pung! He smashed a hole in the ground. What's wrong? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked in confusion. Before Ling Han could answer, they heard a scream in the distance. A person also wanted to climb up the coffin like Ling Han, but when he pressed his palm onto it, he was directly shattered into pieces. Blood danced through the air like a cloud of blood. Gasp! Although that person wasn't some supreme elite, he was still at the Sun-Moon tier. Yet he actually died from a single touch. This coffin was dangerous. At the same time, a violent sound rang out in the sky. They saw a chariot descend from the sky. It was the Stone Emperor's chariot. But now, the purple gold bull was missing a horn, and one side of the chariot was also missing a piece of plate armor. Ling Han's expression changed. Those were all saintly material, yet they had actually been damaged. It was evident how powerful this ancient coffin was. Ding Zizhen was a celestial. Since that was the case, then what was so strange about the collapsed saintly material? Oh no, my father is definitely going to beat me to death now, the Stone Emperor screamed. This chariot naturally didn't belong to him. Rather, he had secretly driven it out to look cool. In his opinion, it was only a trip to a galaxy that was lacking in martial art, so it was naturally impossible for the chariot to be damaged. After all, there were no saints in this galaxy. But great, there were indeed no saints, and they fucking had celestials, which were even more awesome. Now that the chariot was damaged, it was irreparable, so its might would definitely be affected. When he returned, he would definitely be taught a terrible lesson by his father. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was filled with lingering fear. If Ling Han hadn't pulled back in time just then, he would definitely have been blasted into a rain of blood by now. Didn't he see that all saintly material was unreliable? Ling Han frowned, and said to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, "Bring me up." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded, and spread her phoenix wings. Then, she grabbed Ling Han and flew into the air. The two of them arrived above the ancient coffin, and carefully examined it. However, this ancient coffin seemed to be one, and they couldn't even find the gap between the lid and the coffin. And even if there was a gap, who would dare to reach over and open the lid? Strange, there's no way to enter. So how can I help Ding Zizhen's daughter reincarnate? Ling Han originally thought that there would be a passage to enter from above, but with the sensitivity of his spiritual sense, he could say with certainty that there was absolutely no entrance. Otherwise, the Stone Emperor wouldn't have tried to force his way through. In the end, even his saint-level war chariot was destroyed. What should I do? Chapter 1332. In the Sun-Moon tier, Ling Han really didn't need to cultivate to accumulate origin power. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill could perfectly solve this problem. Moreover, others could only ingest one pill after a few years, but he only needed 3 months. Thus, Ling Han only refined pills, refined golden sand, and studied the symbols on the ancient coffin to increase his comprehension. He moved a large amount of soil into the Black Tower. In the Black Tower, his power was even greater, and he could easily refine the golden sand. Huh! Small Tower appeared, and exclaimed in surprise. There's a celestial-level martial art intent on it. Perhaps a celestial died here, and his flesh and blood have affected this land. Ling Han nodded. Small Tower trembled slightly, and didn't speak immediately. It was as if it was observing the sand. After a while it said, if you can obtain a large amount of this sand, I can extract a celestial technique from it. Ling Han's heart trembled, and he asked, what celestial technique? It's related to time, and I'll only know the specifics after extracting it, Small Tower said. Gasp, wasn't this the secret technique of the Ding clan, the Tide of the Ages? Ling Han couldn't help but feel excited. This was the bloodline secret technique of the Ding clan. Every member of the Ding clan could naturally grasp it when their cultivation level reached a certain level, or when their bloodline was naturally powerful. Perhaps this was also why this secret technique was imprinted in Ding Zijian's body. Even if his soul had disappeared, it still existed in his blood, fusing with this land, and was imprinted here. Even if ordinary people knew this, so what? For example, Notionless Saint could only obtain inspiration from it. From small saint to medium saint, or even great saint, he definitely couldn't derive the secret technique of time. Only the Black Tower could do this, because it was definitely a supreme precious treasure, even in the celestial realm. Ling Han was instantly greatly motivated, and he began to collect soil while most people were comprehending beside the ancient coffin. Meanwhile, in the Black Tower, grains of golden sand appeared, and piled up into a small mountain. Is it enough? He asked. Not enough, Small Tower said. Is it enough? Not enough. Just like that, Ling Han continuously moved the sand. After a whole 3 months had passed, Small Tower finally reluctantly nodded its head, saying that it could give it a try. After all, this golden sand had only been stained with some celestial blood. After who knew how many years had passed, the will of the martial art within it had long since begun to dissipate. If it wasn't for the fact that this immortal art just happened to be related to time, it would have been impossible for it to be preserved until now. Ling Han went to temper his body in the immortal flame, while Small Tower extracted the secret technique, Tide of the Ages, from the golden sand. 3 days later, Ling Han had transformed into a 10-year-old boy. He was not far from mastering the rising from the ashes. Next, he would naturally consume the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, and increase his cultivation by another level. Late Supreme Stage, take it, Small Tower said. A speck of light flew over, emitting a light that was even brighter than the sun. However, it did not cause the uncomfortable feeling of being burned and blinded. Have you extracted it? Ling Han asked. Because there is too little will of the martial art, only one link was extracted. If you cannot use this to comprehend it, then you will have to gather this much more golden sand, Small Tower said. That would be around 3 months of hard work. Ling Han nodded. He wanted to grasp it in one go. Bringing this speck of light with him, Ling Han arrived under the reincarnation tree. Then, he pressed the speck of light against the top of his head, and began to comprehend it. His consciousness instantly rumbled, as if a tsunami had formed, threatening to pierce through the top of his head. That speck of light evolved in his consciousness. It was indescribably huge, and when Ling Han looked closely, he saw that there were countless vortexes within the ball of light. As they spun, Ling Han felt as if he could see the birth and destruction of many celestial bodies. Billions of years passed in the blink of an eye. This was the evolution of time, revealing the secrets of heaven and earth. Ling Han tried to touch it with his hand. Instantly, the ball of light dispersed, spreading to the entire consciousness. Then, it began to dissipate one after another. It disappeared without a trace, and could no longer be studied. Ling Han hurriedly began to comprehend it. Under the reincarnation tree, he had close to 400 times more time than others. He did not believe that he could not grasp this secret technique, even if he had 400 times more time. Even if he could only grasp it in one go and understand the general idea, he could slowly study the details. Right now he only wanted to grasp a form. Time passed quietly, and more than a month had passed. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. "Time," he said softly. He teleported to another corner of the Black Tower and pressed a finger on a large tree. Instantly, the leaves of this large tree withered and fell to the ground. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn, it had completely died of old age. I can be considered to have grasped the basics. With a single finger, I can cause someone to lose several thousand years of lifespan in 30 minutes. However, this is complete aging, and not accelerated ripening. Otherwise, this tree should have bloomed and borne fruit. But there was no such process, and it directly died of old age. Although I can use the power of time, I am too weak now. Even if I want to cause someone in the low extreme of the mountain river tier to die of old age, I will need to continuously use it for an entire day. With my current cultivation level, there is no way I can maintain it for such a long time. What a pity. If I could be like Qi Huangji and stop time, that would be great. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. They were both mysterious powers of time, but aging and stopping were completely different concepts. If he could stop time, even for a short instant, it would be extremely effective in battle. On the other hand, if he wanted to use Tide of the Ages to its peak, he would need at least a few 100 million years. Otherwise, against Eternal River tiers and Genesis tiers, reducing their lifespan by several thousand or several hundred years would be nothing. Hold on. Could aging be considered a curse? For those below the immortal level, even Shattering Void tier cultivators only had a lifespan of 1,000 years. If they were affected by Tide of the Ages, it would be fine as long as 100 years of their lifespan was reduced. 10 times, and they would be done for. Ling Han's thoughts scattered, and he thought of many, many things in this moment. "Ling Han," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden suddenly said, "I am about to break through." Ling Han was startled for a moment, and hurriedly brought her out of the Black Tower. Hong long long, thunderclouds gathered, and the heavenly tribulation was about to descend. "Let's cross it together," he said with a smile. It was a good chance for him to increase the power of his heavenly might. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was both touched and nervous, and said, "Please don't. The heavenly tribulation is too terrifying, and I'm confident that I can survive it. I don't need your help." She was afraid that Ling Han would be injured. Hee. Ling Han couldn't help but feel secretly pleased when he saw this. He didn't expose the fact that he wasn't afraid of the heavenly tribulation at all. Instead, he simply wanted to comprehend his own Tao through the heavenly tribulation. Wrapping his arms around the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, he fiercely kissed her. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's eyes instantly widened. She felt that Ling Han was far too absurd. He actually still had such thoughts at a time like this. Quang, a bolt of lightning struck down. It was as if even the heavens couldn't take it anymore, and wanted to strike Ling Han to death. Ling Han held up the sky with one hand. The heavenly lightning fell, but it couldn't even hurt a hair on his body. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was instantly dumbfounded. Chapter 1333. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden knew that Ling Han's physique was very impressive, but she definitely didn't expect it to be this strong. "Don't make trouble, aren't you busy?" Ling Han said with a smile at the sky. He lowered his head and kissed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's small mouth that was gaping in shock. Quang quang quang. The heavens were enraged. Someone dared to interfere with the heavenly tribulation of another. This was a provocation to the heaven and earth. Instantly, terrifying lightning formed a net that descended densely. Only then did Ling Han let go of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She still had to endure the heavenly tribulation herself. That way, she would be able to stabilize her foundation. However, with him standing guard, he could resolve some fatal dangers for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. This was impossible for others. Even saints were no exception. When encountering the heavenly tribulation corresponding to their own level, no matter how astonishing their talent was, they would be in danger of dying. However, Ling Han was an exception. His physique was terrifyingly strong, and he could completely interfere with the heavenly tribulation. At most, he would have a share too. As long as it wasn't the heavenly tribulation of the heavenly body tier, or eternal river tear, he could completely resolve the disaster for others. Can I do this kind of business? Resolving the heavenly tribulation for low-level immortals, and receive some godly metal each time? Ling Han was really poor, and even thought of this kind of business. Forget it, that's too high profile. It won't be good if I'm targeted. However, Ling Han quickly shook his head, and still decided to concoct pills to earn money. Protecting the heavenly tribulation for others was really too high profile. More importantly, if he stood up for others too much, would the heaven and earth bear a grudge? Would it directly send down a heavenly tribulation of the eternal river tear, or even the Genesis tear to kill him? The two of them separated slightly, each enduring their own heavenly tribulation. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was facing a normal heavenly tribulation of the pinnacle level, and Ling Han not only was swept into the heavenly tribulation, but also blocked one for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Thus, the power of the heavenly tribulation he endured was astonishingly 10 times stronger. However, it was only 10 times, so Ling Han was still unafraid. His current physique had already reached the level of level 9 godly metal, and was even a little stronger, so he was completely unafraid of this kind of heavenly tribulation. However, this was also possible. Being swept into the heavenly tribulation wasn't scary, but interfering with the heavenly tribulation for others, and dispelling disasters for others would increase the power he had to endure. He did not know whether it was fixed at 10 times, or the more he interfered, the more powerful it became. No matter what, it was better not to do this business. Ling Han said in his heart. It was better to have some respect for the heavens and earth. This time, he didn't need to shatter his godly bones, so it was naturally easy for him. He observed the operation of the heavenly tribulation, and turned it into his own comprehension. The lightning divine pattern on his right hand became more and more complicated, and it was filled with the charm of the great Tao. Half a day passed, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden successfully passed the heavenly tribulation. She had really become a true king tier of the pinnacle level. Without reaching the pinnacle realm, one could not be considered a king tier. Even if one had reached the pinnacle realm before, if they could not maintain it in the next major realm, they would still fall from the throne of a king tier. At most, they would be slightly stronger than ordinary geniuses. Cultivation was like this. It was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was overjoyed. Even in her dreams, she had never imagined that she would one day be able to step into the pinnacle level. Though she had not managed to cultivate to the pinnacle level in the mountain river tier, and her current pinnacle level could not possibly reach 10 stars, but only around 9 stars, she was still incredibly excited. Congratulations, wife. Come give me a kiss. Ling Han moved closer. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden wasn't Shui Yinyu, and she immediately started to fight back fiercely. Unfortunately, how could she be a match for Ling Han at this moment? She was quickly suppressed, and she was kissed senseless by Ling Han. Little thief, you are bullying me, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said in annoyance. Her beautiful eyes were moving, and there was an indescribable charm to them. Ling Han almost howled like a wolf, and his eyes were red. Unfortunately, his body was only 10 years old, and he was completely powerless to push her down. He was so angry that he hammered his head into the ground, looking as if he wanted to kill someone. What's wrong? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in concern. It's nothing, I just want some peace and quiet. Don't ask me who peace and quiet are. There was still one more month, and Ling Han would be able to temper his body with the immortal flames again. He would take one last berserk blood spirit pill, and raise his cultivation level to the peak stage of the pinnacle level. Then, he would only have to cultivate in seclusion and comprehend, and see the profound mysteries of the heavenly body tier, and he would be able to advance to the next major tier. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden immediately took a berserk blood spirit pill, and her cultivation level was pushed to the next level. It had only been 3 days, and she had advanced a sub-minor level, which made her feel very rueful. This was the benefit of following an alchemist. The increase in cultivation level could make others jealous. Ling Han still had a bottle of spiritual liquid that he had obtained from the Stone Emperor, But that was a heavenly body tier treasure. It would be too much of a waste to take it now, and it would also conflict with the berserk blood spirit pill. It was better to wait until he reached the heavenly body tier before using it. The two of them returned to the side of the ancient coffin. This was really strange. Ding Zijian said that he wanted someone to save his daughter, yet he didn't even allow them to see his daughter's face. How exactly was he going to save her? However, Ling Han had already learned the tide of the ages, so he naturally had no interest in Ding Zijian's reward. He still stayed here, firstly because the golden sand was precious, and he could sell it for money. Secondly, the seals on the ancient coffin were indeed meaningful to study, and they could increase one's comprehension of the great Tao. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to break through, someone shouted. This was not rare in this place. The ancient coffin could help one comprehend Tao, and in the past half a year or so, there had already been a considerable number of people who had broken through to a new level. Every few days, they would be able to sense the movement of people undergoing heavenly tribulation in the distance. However, the higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it was to loosen the barrier. For example, none of those eternal river tier cultivators had broken through, and they might have to sit here for 8 to 10 years, or even 1,000 years. To such elites, breaking through in 1 million years was already a pleasant surprise. Another person shouted excitedly, attracting many envious gazes. Ling Han walked over, and a cold glint instantly flashed across his eyes. That was Xie Donglai. He was about to break through to the heavenly body tier, and there was a faint flicker of starlight on his body. This was the most obvious sign. Moreover, he was also the first person to break through to the heavenly body tier in the past half a year. Firstly, he was indeed a prodigy of the present age, and secondly, he had been silent on this barrier for a long time. With the help of the ancient coffin, he had finally accumulated enough strength and soared into the sky. Ha 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 ha. Xie Donglai was full of pride, and he quickly left. No matter how arrogant he was, he didn't dare to undergo heavenly tribulation here and affect others. Putting aside the fact that there were many eternal river tier cultivators here, even if there weren't, he didn't dare to provoke public anger. That would really be enough to kill him with a single punch. He flew up and arrived in front of Ling Han, killing intent involuntarily flashing across his eyes. When he broke through, the first person he would kill would be Ling Han, and then it would be Faceless. One had stolen the woman of his heart, and the other had dared to humiliate him. They both deserved to die. He left a trail of dust in his wake, and flew into the distance. No one from the Xie clan followed him to protect him. The danger of undergoing heavenly tribulation only came from the heavenly tribulation itself. How could there be anyone who dared to charge into the heavenly tribulation? Moreover, even if they charged into the heavenly tribulation, they would also be swept into the heavenly tribulation. So where would they have the time to cause trouble? Thus, heavenly tribulation was both the most dangerous and the safest. Ling Han suddenly stood up. His chance had come. Chapter 1334. Xie Donglai's figure flew into the distance. He was filled with excitement, and couldn't help but let out a long roar. The whole world was bright and clear in his eyes. He was a prodigy. He had advanced into the mountain river tier in just over 100 years, and reached the sun-moon tier in just over 1,000 years. However, he had been stuck at the peak stage of the sun-moon tier 3,000 years ago, unable to advance any further. Putting aside the fact that there was only a thin line separating the peak stage of the sun-moon tier from the heavenly body tier, this thin line separated who knew how many people. It could even be said that one was in the sky while the other was on the ground. Now he was finally about to break through to the heavenly body tier. From then on, he would no longer be an expert. Instead, he could be called a true expert. When he thought about the glory he would have after reaching the heavenly body tier, and how he would be able to trample all of his enemies under his feet, and trample on them as he pleased, he couldn't help but want to laugh loudly. His grin was so wide that it almost reached his ears. Faceless Ling Han, just you wait. He wanted to endure the heavenly tribulation as soon as possible, and become an elite of the heavenly body tier. In his excitement, he didn't even notice that there was someone following behind him. Ling Han activated the star-plucking step. After fusing it with the secret technique of lightning, his speed was astonishingly fast. Putting aside the fact that Xie Donglai wasn't at the heavenly body tier yet, even if he had advanced to the heavenly body tier, he still might not be faster than Ling Han. After all, Ling Han was also close to possessing the power of the heavenly body tier. After flying for close to an hour, Xie Donglai stopped and began to transcend the tribulation. In just half a day, he would advance into the heavenly body tier. He released the suppression on his cultivation level. Dark clouds instantly surged, and the heavenly tribulation descended as expected. Meanwhile, his aura was still rising with all his might. In an instant, it surpassed the pinnacle of the Sun-Moon tier, and was between the Sun-Moon tier and the heavenly body tier. Every time he endured the heavenly tribulation, his power would increase a little, until he truly advanced into the heavenly body tier. Correspondingly, the power of the heavenly tribulation would also increase step by step, and it would not increase to the peak all at once. Clang, the first bolt of lightning had already descended. Xie Donglai let out a long roar, and wielded a divine sword to strike at the descending bolt of lightning. Ling Han's figure moved, and he shot out rapidly. "Xie Donglai, I'm here today to settle old scores," he shouted. With the envelopment of the heavenly tribulation, even Eternal River tier elites did not dare to extend their divine sense over. Otherwise, they would be swept into the heavenly tribulation if they were not careful. Moreover, under the effects of the heavenly tribulation, it was not something that anyone's divine sense could penetrate. Even saints could not do so. Killing someone in a heavenly tribulation was truly without a trace. Even if one mastered the secret art of time, they would not be able to trace it back. Ling Han. Xie Donglai was both furious, surprised, and delighted. He hated Ling Han to the core. Yet he had never imagined that he would actually dare to charge into the heavenly tribulation. Was he tired of living? He laughed loudly and said, "I haven't even gone to look for you, yet you've already come to seek your own death. Xie Donglai, we've exchanged blows many times, and when have you ever gained the upper hand?" Ling Han asked calmly. He was brimming with confidence as the two of them faced off. This Xie Donglai couldn't help but choke. Previously, it could be said that he had completely suppressed Ling Han in terms of cultivation level, yet he had not gained the slightest bit of advantage. In the end, he had even fled back to the Xie clan with his tail between his legs. He had almost been frozen, and from then on, become a passerby. However, that was all because of Ling Han's good luck. He had either obtained the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's protection, or faceless interference, causing him to be unable to use his overwhelming power. But this time, he definitely would not allow history to repeat itself. "Ling Han, I'm about to advance to the heavenly body tier. Before me, you are not even an ant." He laughed loudly, and took the initiative to charge at Ling Han. As long as he dragged Ling Han into the heavenly tribulation, this brat would be severely wounded even if he did not die. He didn't think that he would be able to kill Ling Han like this, and he didn't want to do so either. This was too unsatisfying. Only by killing Ling Han with his own hands would he be able to vent the anger that had accumulated in his heart. By dragging Ling Han into the heavenly tribulation, he only wanted to make Ling Han suffer a little and collect a little interest. Ling Han was naturally unafraid, and he flew out, meeting Xie Donglai's attack head-on. Pung! The two of them exchanged a blow, and because of this, Ling Han had interfered with Xie Donglai's heavenly tribulation. Heaven and earth instantly reacted, and another tribulation cloud formed, gathering densely above Ling Han's head. Xie Donglai was sent flying, his face filled with astonishment. He was completely unable to believe that in terms of this blow, his power was actually inferior to Ling Han's. How was this possible? Although he had not truly advanced to the heavenly body tier, he could definitely suppress those at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. So how could he be inferior to Ling Han? He suddenly thought of a possibility, and instantly became both furious and envious. Pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. Who would have thought that you have actually cultivated to the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier? He was about to go mad with jealousy, This was because he had spent around 1,000 years trying to touch the threshold of the pinnacle level. Yet he could not sense anything at all. Then, he had suffered a great loss at faceless hands. And it was only then that he decided to break through to the heavenly body tier as soon as possible. He wanted to personally take revenge. Who would have thought that the cultivation level that he dreamed of would be easily reached by Ling Han? Only a few years had passed. So what if you have reached the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier? As long as I truly advance to the heavenly body tier, killing you will be as easy as turning over my hand. Xie Donglai was flustered and exasperated. However, this was also the truth. He was a 4-star genius, so even if he had just advanced to the heavenly body tier, his battle prowess would at least increase by 3 stars, right? So what if Ling Han was at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier? There was still a large gap between him and him. Then I won't give you the chance to advance to the heavenly body tier. Ling Han roared, and directly drew the divine demon sword. He wanted to kill Xie Donglai as quickly as possible to avoid any more complications. Ling Han, you've made an enemy of me time and time again. However, this time, you're the one who's seeking death. Xie Donglai said in a harsh voice. He resisted the heavenly tribulation as he faced Ling Han's attacks. He unleashed the remnant might of the heavenly body tier's heavenly tribulation. Even the slightest graze would be enough to cause Ling Han to suffer. However, he clearly did not know that heavenly tribulation was like nourishment to Ling Han. It was for him to comprehend. If he was truly struck by the heavenly tribulation of the heavenly body tier, his godly bones would be unharmed, but his skin and flesh would definitely be blasted into smithereens. If it was only a remnant shockwave, then it was really nothing. Quang! Divine lightning rumbled, and struck Ling Han and Xie Donglai at the same time. There was no mistake. One was a heavenly tribulation, and the other was a heavenly tribulation of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. It definitely would not strike the wrong person. Ah! Xie Donglai screamed in agony, blood spurting from all over his body. To any prodigy, heavenly tribulation was incredibly frightening, and they would need to wholeheartedly resist it. But now, he was suffering the combined attack of Ling Han and the heavenly tribulation. Moreover, Ling Han was also at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and his battle prowess was astonishingly powerful. It was almost no weaker than the heavenly tribulation. How could he endure this? If that was all, then it would be fine because Ling Han was also suffering the combined attack of him and the heavenly tribulation at the same time. However, the problem was that Ling Han was actually completely unscathed. This caused him to explode with fury, and also shocked to the extreme. This physique was too freakish, wasn't it? It had completely exceeded common sense. Damn it, he cursed. The one who should die is you. Ling Han used the divine demon sword, and a boundless might and killing intent exploded from it. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1336. I didn't lie at all. There is indeed a clan mark in my body, engraved on my divine sense to protect the Xie clan's secret technique that I know. If anyone tries to force me to reveal the Xie clan's secret technique, the mark will destroy me. At the same time, the elites of the Xie clan will know who is plotting against us. Xie Donglai said anxiously. If I'm killed, it'll be the same. Ling Han laughed loudly. You're undergoing a tribulation. I just need to add fuel to the fire, and the Xie clan will think you're an idiot, who can't even endure a heavenly tribulation. This Xie Donglai's face instantly twisted. This was completely feasible. Hiss, was this why Ling Han didn't give up? He wanted to heavily injure him, and finally kill him in the hands of the heavenly tribulation? How detestable. Xie Donglai turned around, wanting to escape. Can you escape? Ling Han suppressed him forcefully. In this situation, he had completely gained the upper hand. Xie Donglai frantically tried to break out of the encirclement. He didn't want to die, and launched countless attacks at Ling Han. He really had to put his life on the line, burning his blood essence and lifespan to raise his battle prowess again. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to escape from Ling Han's encirclement. Ling Han activated Tide of the Ages. It was a good time to test the power of this secret technique. The attack swept over, and Ling Han stood proudly. Xie Donglai was shocked. According to his calculations, this attack would send Ling Han flying, and he would take the opportunity to escape. As long as he could return to the Grand Ancestor's side, there would be only a handful of people in the world who could kill him, and Ling Han definitely wasn't one of them. But why wasn't Ling Han sent flying? Die! Ling Han's fist flew over, and it was as if the heavens were collapsing. Pung! Xie Donglai's left shoulder instantly exploded, and a large chunk was blasted off. Only a sliver of his entire right arm was connected to his shoulder, and it looked like it would fall at any moment. How many more punches can I take? Ling Han continued to attack. Pung pung pung. Under the iron fists, heaven and earth shook. However, all of the activity was concealed by the heavenly tribulation. Even if someone passed by, if they did not personally witness it, they would not know that there was actually a bloody battle going on within the heavenly tribulation. Of course, this couldn't be called a bloody battle. It was just Ling Han one-sidedly trampling on Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai's entire body was bathed in blood, and there was practically no part of his body that was intact. His life force had fallen to rock bottom, and there was no need for Ling Han to attack again. As long as the heavenly tribulation struck him a few more times, he would die here forever. He was incomparably resentful. Ling Han was clearly his murderer, but only he knew that Ling Han could leave openly, and even appear in front of Xie Qian. Right at this moment, Ling Han stopped and turned around to leave. Ah! Xie Donglai roared in pain. At this moment his heart was bleeding. He had really died for nothing. However, there was a blur before his eyes. A figure shot over and punched into his chest. The destructive force shattered his spirit like a broken tile. It was Ling Han. Xie Donglai was filled with disbelief. Why would Ling Han suddenly return to deal a fatal blow to him? He could feel that the seal in his divine sense sea was cracking open, and once it completely shattered, it would be the moment of his death. Moreover, everything that he had experienced and sensed before his death would be transmitted, along with the shattered fragments, into the minds of all the heavenly body tier elites of the Xie clan. Almost every Eternal River tier force had mastered this kind of technique. It was implanted at birth. Firstly, it represented this force, and secondly, it could protect the secret technique that they had learned in the future. Thirdly, it was also a kind of deterrence. If anyone dared to touch their people, they would definitely know about them, find them, and hunt them down. Thus, Eternal River tier forces were all high and mighty, and their heirs were also fearless. No one dared to kill them. However, Ling Han had actually made his move. He had purposefully allowed the Xie clan to target him. One had to realize that he clearly didn't need to make a move, and the heavenly tribulation would deal with the rest. Do you think that I won't kill you with my own hands? Ling Han looked straight into Xie Donglai's eyes. When he decided to kill Xie Donglai, this person could only die by his hands, and not by the heavenly tribulation. Only by killing him with his own hands could he vent his anger. Xie Donglai stared blankly at Ling Han. At this moment, he didn't know whether to call Ling Han crazy or admire his courage. None of this had anything to do with him anymore. He was about to die. I will wait for you. At most, in a few breaths' time, you will come to accompany me. He spat out a complete sentence. Ling Han shook his fist. Pa! Xie Donglai's whole body was blasted into pieces. His physical body turned into dust, and his divine sense also turned into dust. A strange fluctuation surged out, and it was as if it could ignore space and instantly spread to an endless distance. The heavenly tribulation that belonged to Xie Donglai immediately disappeared, but a strong sense of danger rose up in Ling Han. A divine sense had already locked onto him. It was too powerful. The other party was definitely thousands of miles away, perhaps even more. However, a divine sense had spread out and locked onto him, and could kill him with a single thought. This was the power of the Eternal River tier. The ancestor of the Xie clan, Xie Qian, was a great general of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, and an elite at the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. To say nothing of Ling Han, even if Venerable Trinity came back to life, he would only be insta-killed by Xie Qian. And now, Great General Xie's real body was still comprehending in front of the ancient coffin, But a wisp of divine sense flew over, directly threatening Ling Han with death. The reason why it was only a threat was because Ling Han was still undergoing heavenly tribulation. If he interfered when others were undergoing heavenly tribulation and injured them, he would also be dragged into it. If he protected others, then Ling Han already had experience, and the might of the heavenly tribulation would be at least 10 times stronger. Even Xie Qian didn't dare to casually undergo heavenly tribulation. Although he was confident that he wouldn't die, he would definitely have to expend some life force to kill a mere sun-moon tier cultivator. What kind of joke was that? The heavenly tribulation only lasted for half a day, and he could wait. How could a junior at the sun-moon tier escape from his hands? This wisp of divine sense didn't speak. It didn't question Ling Han why he wanted to kill Xie Donglai, nor did it arrogantly say something like, "Those who killed members of the Xie clan must die." No, Xie Qian's wisp of divine sense waited quietly just like that. With his status and strength, there was absolutely no need for him to put on a show in front of a minor character. This was a complete suppression in terms of cultivation level, just like an emperor to a commoner. Ling Han was also cold. Xie Qian's divine sense turned into a projection, and it was precisely the appearance of great General Xie. He was dressed in a suit of armor, and he had an awe-inspiring appearance that was filled with an aura of iron and blood. He stared at this eternal river tier elite, completely unafraid. Quang, the heavenly tribulation continued to crash down, but Ling Han didn't even blink, and didn't even raise his hand. He simply stared at Xie Qian, as if he wanted to compare himself with this elite. My present strength is indeed inferior to yours, but my will is like the heavens, and you can't suppress it. An expression of shock gradually appeared on the face of the figure formed from Xie Qian's divine sense. Who could undergo heavenly tribulation so easily? Thus, even though great General Xie had seen many elites, was used to seeing death, and had experienced innumerable dangers, he still couldn't help but reveal an expression of shock. This was really the first time a young lady had sat in a bridal sedan chair. Being able to cause an eternal river tier to lose his composure. If word of this spread, Ling Han's reputation would definitely go down the drain. Chapter 1337. One old and one young, one strong and one weak, they confronted each other just like that. The disparity in strength was like heaven and earth. But in terms of aura, Ling Han was not the least bit weaker. How many people dared to look an eternal river tier in such a manner? To say nothing of clashing with such a gaze. A wisp of the aura of an eternal river tier would be able to crush a sun-moon tier into dust. It's a pity that you're not a disciple of my Xie family. After a long while, Xie Qian opened his mouth and said these words with an incomparably regretful tone. This was the first person that he had seen who could endure the heavenly tribulation so easily. Even he, an eternal river tier elite, couldn't help but admire Ling Han. He felt a strong sense of admiration for Ling Han. Too bad. Who asked Ling Han to kill his descendants? The Xie family is not to be humiliated. Therefore, he could only feel regret, because a future king, or even an ultimate powerhouse, would soon die in his hands. This made him feel as if he had wasted the zither and cooked the crane. However, that was all. He had lived for hundreds of millions of years. How could the number of geniuses that had died at his hands be small? To eternal river tier elites, half a day's time was like the blink of an eye, and passed very quickly. The heavenly tribulation dissipated just as suddenly as it had appeared, and it also ended shockingly quickly, without the slightest sign. Quang, after the last bolt of lightning fell, the thunderclouds in the sky disappeared completely in an instant. Xie Qian made his move. He stretched out his right hand, and a silver river appeared. Millions and millions of stars floated around it, and it suppressed towards Ling Han. Each of these great stars contained the power of a heavenly body tier elite. Millions upon millions of them shot over at the same time, and it was as if they were destroying the world. And this was only a wisp of Xie Qian's divine sense. Boom! When this strike landed, a massive crater was blasted into the ground. It was as wide as 100 miles, and as deep as several dozen miles, showing how frightening an Eternal River Tier elite was. And this was only because they were in the two-realm battlefield, in a wondrous space. Otherwise, if such an attack were to land in the outside world, there would definitely be no chance of survival within 5,000 kilometers. The rubble and dust formed a huge mushroom cloud that rose into the sky. Xie Qian revealed a look of surprise because the instant his attack reached Ling Han, the latter had disappeared. With a wave of his hand, a hurricane was created, sweeping away all the dust in the air. Where is he? Xie Qian revealed a pondering look. He absolutely did not sense the fluctuations of space tearing. So Ling Han definitely did not use any means like the teleportation talisman to escape. Moreover, the activation of teleportation also required time. Under his attack, even if Ling Han had the teleportation talisman, it would only rot in his hands. Moreover, this place greatly reduced the range of his attack, but it was the same for the teleportation talisman. Even if Ling Han really teleported, he would not be able to escape from his attack range, and would still die. However, Ling Han was like air, and had disappeared. Strange, Xie Qian couldn't help but mutter. He hadn't been moved for many years, yet today, he was moved twice in a row because of a young man at the Sun Moon tier. I'm curious now, what kind of technique has this boy mastered? His main body released his divine sense, and quickly spread it across the area, searching for Ling Han's whereabouts. In this way, the other heavenly body tier elites were instantly astonished. Why did you release your divine sense out of the blue? Did you want to start a war? Eternal River tiers were too powerful. If they released their divine sense without any qualms, each of them would be able to extend over 10,000 miles. And in this effective area, Eternal River tiers could launch powerful attacks, just like what they had done to Ling Han just now. If this was their own territory, then it would not matter. So what if they released their divine sense? Who would dare to stop them? But it was different here. There were several dozen Eternal River tier elites, and if anyone released their divine sense, it could possibly be taken as a provocation by others. To say nothing of the fact that there were elites from the netherworld here. Even if they all belonged to the same force, they might not be able to trust each other so much, allowing themselves to be enveloped by another's divine sense. If the other suddenly attacked, it would be hard to say what the consequences would be for them. Before this, every Eternal River tier elite had shrunk their divine sense to an extremely small area to avoid provoking others and causing unnecessary misunderstandings. But it was precisely because of this that no one thought that Xie Qian would be so daring as to oppose all the Eternal River tiers here. Putting aside the fact that Xie Qian's battle prowess might not be the strongest, even if it was, he would definitely be finished if he was surrounded and attacked by so many elites. Thus everyone was curious. What exactly was this Xie Qian doing? Xie Qian was not in the mood to care about what the others thought. He did not think that he would be surrounded and attacked. After all, they were Eternal River tier elites, and if there was no mortal enmity, no one would rashly start a battle. Of course, he could not go too far either. Otherwise, once they formed an alliance, he could only flee in a sorry state. If he fought head-on, he would definitely be defeated, and he would definitely die. But no matter how he spread out his divine sense to search, he could not find Ling Han's whereabouts. This caused his expression to become more and more strange, and also more and more grave. In this world, there were not many things that could attract his attention, but this could definitely be counted as one of them. Xie Qian, have you had enough? An Eternal River tier elite asked coldly. Releasing his mystical power without any qualms, were you deliberately provoking him? Once was fine. But if you continued to do this, you had really gone too far. Did you really think that you were the king of the Eternal River tier? Xie Qian frowned, knowing that the endurance of the elites had already reached the limit. Immediately, he slowly withdrew his divine sense. This divine sense was like the ebbing tide, rapidly rolling back from all directions. And when his divine sense retreated to that ancient coffin, he suddenly faltered. Woo! He released a muffled humph. His expression instantly twisted beyond recognition. His divine sense went berserk, and like a tsunami, it launched an attack. Ah! In that instant, At least a few hundred people had their spirits directly exploded, turning into living dead, and there was still an eternal river tier elite of the netherworld nearby. He was also attacked by Xie Qian's divine sense, and instantly flew into a rage. With a loud roar, he charged at Xie Qian. But he had not even delivered a palm strike when he paled in shock, because Xie Qian's present appearance was really too horrible to look at. Black blood flowed from all of his orifices. If this had been on a mortal, he would definitely not have long to live. Immortals naturally would not die just from bleeding from all of their orifices. But a mighty eternal river tier elite was actually in such a tragic state. What exactly was going on with him? You killed a disciple of our netherworld. Don't you think you should give us an explanation? This netherworld elite asked coldly. Those who had died just now were all people of the netherworld, and furthermore, they were related to him. Otherwise, they would not be qualified to stay by his side. Yet Xie Qian acted as if he had not heard, his hands covering his ears. More and more black blood surged out from his eyes, nostrils, mouth and ears, seeping through the gaps between his fingers. For galaxies appeared, but one after another, the stars were actually exploding. Every time a galaxy exploded, the power of an eternal river tier would drop a little. Even if there were tens of thousands of stars in a galaxy, they could not withstand such exhaustion, and would explode completely not long after. What was the difference between this and suicide? Crazy, he had really gone crazy. Chapter 1338. Xie Qian's hair was disheveled, and his face was covered in black blood, looking like a malicious spirit. The stars exploded one after another, forming a terrifying impulse wave. What was even more shocking was that Xie Qian's divine soul was also burning, and it could be clearly heard from thousands of miles away. Bai Chong, you actually dare to launch a sneak attack on an expert of my divine world? Gu Su stepped forward. He was dressed in bright yellow robes, and he radiated a powerful and domineering aura. This was the leading figure of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, as well as the fourth-generation grandson of the Crimson Flame Emperor. He was believed to be the person most likely to inherit the throne. As expected, he had the majestic aura of an emperor. Even if his cultivation was the same, there were very few people who could compare to him in terms of domineeringness. The underworld expert who had been attacked by Xie Qian's divine sense earlier, Bai Chong, who was mentioned by Gu Su, could not help but reveal a look of anger. What does that have to do with him? He was the one who was ambushed, all right? He hadn't even fought back, yet he was already covered in blood, looking as if he didn't want to live anymore. But did it really have anything to do with him? If he really had such great strength, would he have needed to endure it earlier? He could have just glared at him and berated him. If the person who reprimanded him was a nobody, then he naturally wouldn't get angry. He would just directly reach out and wipe the other party off the face. However, this was Gu Su. Be it in terms of status or strength, he was above him. This made him feel indignant. Fuck, how can you accuse me wrongly? Gu Su, are you blind? An expert from the netherworld also walked out. He wore an azure robe, and looked no different from an ordinary person. However, his eyes were like rubies. It was extremely strange. Gu Su couldn't help but reveal a serious expression. The other end of the passageway between the two worlds on Cloud Apex planet was the netherworld's Longwind planet, and this person was the imperial uncle of the Cyan, Civ imperial dynasty, Fu Donglu. He was an extremely senior expert, and was also very powerful. The reason he accused Bai Chong of launching a sneak attack was because Xie Qian's reaction was too inexplicable, and it was also a blow to the morale of the immortal realm. We haven't even started the battle, but you're already bleeding from all 7 apertures. And you're so scared that you want to destroy your own galaxy. However, if he said that he had been ambushed by the netherworld, the result would be different. He looked at Fu Donglu, his gaze awe-inspiring. It was impossible for the netherworld and the god realm to get along in the first place. This was determined by the form of life, as well as the rules of the two realms. The reason why the two sides hadn't started a war yet was because the ancient coffin was too important, so both sides were waiting patiently. Now Xie Qian suddenly went berserk. This became a fuse, instantly causing the atmosphere to become incomparably tense. Ah! Xie Qian roared loudly. He ignited his soul and self-destructed the galaxy. In a short instant, his battle prowess could be said to have been raised to the extreme, easily breaking through the limit of the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, and reaching the peak stage of the consummate level. This was the eruption of burning one's life. There was no turning back. Even a saint would not be able to reverse this process. In other words, Xie Qian was dead for sure, but in the process of him not dying, his battle prowess would also become incredibly frightening. He could practically look down on all the Eternal River tier elites. He was no longer destroying the Milky Way, but he was attacking everyone. Boom! It was earth-shattering and incomparably terrifying. Moreover, he didn't differentiate between friend and foe at all. He fought against those from the underworld and those from the god realm. Damn it! Damn it! All the elites' expressions changed drastically. Though they were all in the Eternal River tier, the Eternal River tier was still divided into 4 levels, and those that could reach the consummate level could be counted on one's fingers. Now Xie Qian's battle prowess was shockingly in the consummate level, and had even reached the peak stage. It could be claimed that even if the Crimson Flame Emperor and the Blue Cloud Emperor were here in person, they wouldn't dare say that they could firmly suppress Xie Qian. With such an elite going berserk, who wouldn't be shocked and terrified? Those below the consummate level all had to join forces. Otherwise, they would only be killed by Xie Qian. Those in the consummate level, on the other hand, didn't need to be so disheveled. They could rely on their own battle prowess to withstand Xie Qian's attacks. Boom, boom, boom. This was a battle on the level of the Eternal River tier. Under normal circumstances, if a battle started, it would be carried out in the galaxy, but now it was carried out in a crowd. This naturally caused an extremely frightening number of casualties. In just a few breaths' time, at least 1/3 of the people had been killed by the shockwaves of the battle. It was an indiscriminate slaughter, and both the immortal realm and the netherworld treated everyone equally. There were still a considerable number of people who hadn't died, and they all drew out powerful treasures. These were all bestowed by Eternal River tier elites. Otherwise, even Heavenly Body tier elites would be useless. With a sweep of the shockwaves, even the peak stage of the Heavenly Body tier would be turned into dust. So what protective effect could the treasures they had created have? You deserve to die. This time, not only were the eyes of the elites of the netherworld red, but even those of the immortal realm were no exception. There were too many prodigies of the younger generation here. But how many of them could possess Eternal River tier, or even saint-level treasures like Qi Huangji and the Stone Emperor? There were innumerable casualties. With just this, it was estimated that the martial art of the whole long light galaxy would decline greatly in the next several tens of millions of years. Of course, the netherworld would also be the same. The effects of this would be very far-reaching. These elites all attacked with their full strength, wanting to kill Xie Qian to prevent him from continuing his slaughter. Theoretically, the combined forces of so many elites would be enough to suppress any Eternal River tier elite. But the problem was that Xie Qian had already gone mad. He had ignited his spiritual fire, and was in an extreme frenzy. He didn't care at all whether he would be injured or not, or whether he would die. This kind of madness, who could still stop it? Xie Qian charged and crashed, and everyone could only block him. Thankfully, the spiritual fire would eventually be exhausted, and it would only last for a day at most. Even if it was an elite of the Eternal River tier, whose spirit was incredibly strong, there would still come a time when they would be burnt to ashes. In this kind of chaos, no one noticed that the spirits of the living beings, that were blasted one after another, had actually drifted into the ancient coffin. No, it should be said that the ancient coffin had released a strange suction force, causing the spirits that should have originally returned to dust, and should have returned to dust, to not return to the heaven and earth, but were forcibly pulled into the ancient coffin. This mountain-like coffin was undergoing a change that no one could detect inside, because this was a technique set up by a severing mundane tier elite, and even saints could not possibly see through it. Everyone below the eternal river tier began to flee for their lives. Thankfully, there were many eternal river tier elites helping them, and they just managed to keep Xie Qian within a certain range, which gave everyone a chance to escape. However, streaks of terrifying power were still wreaking havoc, and once they were caught up, they would definitely die. Only king tiers like the Stone Emperor, who were in the heavenly body tier in the first place, and had secret treasures in hand, could easily escape a distance of 10,000 miles, and finally escape from Xie Qian's attack range. Even the Cloud Maiden and Yu Ying were in a sorry state, and it was already their luck that they hadn't died. No matter how prodigious they were, in front of an eternal river tier elite, they were still so weak that they could not even withstand a single blow. Even so, 99% of the young people had died here. A large number of living souls were drawn into the ancient coffin, pushing the ancient coffin to undergo a further change. Ka ka ka. The ancient coffin released a loud sound, and the lid was actually slowly opening. Reading on one's phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 1340. Boom, a terrifying aura swept out. This was a saint-level aura. In this galaxy, this was an invincible power. Unless the celestial realm mobilized troops, no one could match it. However, this incredibly powerful woman hugged her head and groaned in pain. A terrifying power surged out, sweeping up boundless waves of dust. Pung pung pung, they shot out in all directions. Pa pa pa. The ancient coffin beneath her cracked, and then suddenly shattered, turning into millions upon millions of pieces. This should not have been caused by her. Rather, this ancient coffin had already completed its mission. Otherwise, a saint would not have been able to open the coffin and ruin Ding Zixian's arrangements. How did I become like this? The woman shouted into the sky, her voice filled with resentment. The present her definitely could not be considered a beauty. In fact, she could not even be considered a normal person. Half of her beauty was like jade, while the other half was like a skeleton. To a woman who was obsessed with beauty, this was unacceptable. Furthermore, even if she reached the Genesis tier, she could not possibly regenerate her flesh and blood. This was not because she had suffered an injury, but rather because her soul had gathered, and she was reviving the vitality of her withered body. This method could be considered nature-defying, but Ding Zixian had clearly made a mistake in his calculations. Although he had brought her back to life, only half of her body had recovered. This was a battle against heaven and earth. No matter how powerful a saint was, how could he possibly win against heaven? Thus, the other half of her body definitely could not be recovered, unless she was reborn using the same method. However, the ancient coffin had already been destroyed, and this should be the key. Without this woman would obviously have to continue living with this strange appearance. If Ding Zixian had not lied about this matter, this woman should be Ding Ling. She released a furious roar, her voice incredibly shrill. Boom boom boom. She continuously swung her fists, ravaging the ground until it shattered. However, this was the passageway between the two realms, and the regulations here were strange. Furthermore, the structure of heaven and earth was unusually stable, and it was actually able to withstand the full power of a saint. I hate you. I hate you. Ding Ling shouted loudly. Suddenly, she smacked her palm down on her forehead. Pa! Her forehead instantly exploded, and even her whole body turned into countless pieces. She had only been revived for a few breaths, yet she actually committed suicide. Xiao! Her body turned into nothingness, but a crystal that was only the size of a finger fell from the sky. It was actually able to withstand the full power of a saint without being destroyed. Ling Han told this to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was stunned at first, but then sighed and said, "If I were her, perhaps I would also choose the same ending." Why? Ling Han asked. For women, especially beauties, looks are the most important, even more important than their lives. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said slowly, her voice filled with sympathy. If my appearance is destroyed, I definitely won't see you again. I'd rather commit suicide and destroy my own body, so that you'll forever remember my most beautiful moments. Ling Han shook his head and gently pulled her into his embrace. He said, Don't ever have such thoughts. As long as you're alive, everything can be changed. But if you're dead, then it's already set in stone. Nothing can be changed. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded, but Ling Han knew that she hadn't hurt him at all. If she really couldn't recover her appearance, she would still choose to do the same as Ding Ling. Sometimes, women were just so difficult to understand. Ling Han sighed and exited the Black Tower with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. There was still a mighty aura rippling in the air. That was the aura of a saint. Even if she had died, she could still exist for a very, very long time. This kind of ending was probably something that Ding Zizhen could never have imagined. He had racked his brains and plotted for who knew how many years, but his daughter had just come back to life when she committed suicide. But in Ling Han's eyes, even if he had known that this would be the end, Ding Zizhen's choice would not have changed. He would still have used countless lives to exchange for a chance for his daughter to live again. Even if it was only for a short moment, he would be satisfied. That was because he had tried his best and given his daughter a chance to choose, rather than helplessly die at the hands of his fiancée. Ling Han couldn't help but ask himself, if it were him, and he had this kind of opportunity, what would he do? Would he go crazy for the sake of his son? No matter what, only powerful strength is the most reliable, Ling Han said. Only with strength would he be able to avoid the tragedy from happening. And no matter how he tried to make up for it in the future, there would be regrets. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded. When she thought of Ding Ling's ending, she also felt a strong sense of danger. Ling Han picked up the piece of crystal that Ding Ling had left behind. In that instant, a memory that did not belong to him suddenly appeared in his mind. At the same time, he also felt as if he was being stared at by someone else. This memory was the complete tide of the ages. After all, the golden sand that had been extracted from here could not possibly contain Ding Zizhen's complete memory. Thus, although Small Tower had refined a tide of the ages, which had also been grasped by Ling Han, this could not be considered the true tide of the ages. Now, however, it was complete. Could this crystal be the precious treasure that Ding Zizhen had brought out from his fiancée's clan? Could it be that it could gather the souls of the dead over the long years and revive Ding Ling? And since the blood of the Ding clan flowed in Ding Ling's veins, she naturally also grasped the tide of the ages. Ding Zizhen had fooled everyone and had never thought of passing down this secret technique of his clan. But reality was fickle, and it still fell into Ling Han's hands. It was just that feeling of being watched. Since this was a treasure that belonged to some force of the celestial realm, it definitely had a unique mark. Perhaps it had not been exposed because it had been suppressed by the ancient coffin, but now that it had fallen into Ling Han's hands, it had triggered that mark and allowed that clan of the celestial realm to discover him. Ling Han hurriedly entered into the Black Tower with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. There was too little time, and perhaps that clan could not confirm his exact location, but it was probably already aware of his appearance and aura. He had not even entered into the celestial realm, and there was already trouble. Ling Han used the power of the Black Tower to wash away all the marks on the crystal, and then began to cultivate in seclusion with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden needed a large amount of comprehension time to increase her grasp of the regulations of heaven and earth, and raise the height of the pinnacle level as much as possible to reach the peak stage. Meanwhile, Ling Han was only a step away from the peak stage of the pinnacle level, and he similarly needed a large amount of time to break through to the heavenly body tier. The powerful figures of the Xie clan all knew that Xie Donglai had been killed by him, and though Xie Qian had died, the Xie clan still had heavenly body tier elites, though their exact cultivation level was unknown. Thus, if Ling Han wanted to return and raise the 5 sects to the ground, he would definitely need to have the power to resist the Xie clan. Otherwise, on one hand, he would destroy the 5 sects, and on the other, he would be hunted down by the Xie clan. What kind of situation would that be? Thus, he would rather charge up to the heavenly body tier in one go, and then seek out the 5 sects to settle accounts. In any case, it would only be a matter of a few years. Both of them cultivated in seclusion, With the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, they did not need to worry about the accumulation of origin power, and only needed to focus on increasing their comprehension of cultivation level. Very soon, Ling Han consumed the last Berserk Blood Spirit Pill he could take, and his cultivation level rose to the peak stage of the pinnacle level in one go. Afterwards, he began to cultivate in seclusion, comprehending the mysteries of the heavenly body tier. Theoretically speaking, it had not been long since he had reached the pinnacle level, so advancing to the heavenly body tier should have been even faster. However, the reality was not so. He kept feeling that there was a barrier between him and the heaven and earth, preventing him from crossing over even after a long time. He exited seclusion and asked the notionless saint for guidance, and only then did he find out about this so-called age limit. In this world, there was number 100-year-old heavenly body tier cultivator. Ling Han naturally did not believe this. How old was Hunyao? Not only had she long since advanced into the heavenly body tier, she had even charged up to the Genesis tier. So how could there be an age limit of 100 years? And perhaps this was targeted at beings from the immortal realm. Ling Han could only spend some more time comprehending it. At first, he had thought that it would be a matter of a few months at most, but the amount of time he needed had far exceeded his expectations. Relying on the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill to forcefully increase the accumulation of origin power finally revealed its drawbacks at this time. Every 3 months, Ling Han would stop once to temper his body with the immortal flames. And in the 3 months that had passed in the outside world, he had actually comprehended close to 100 years of Tao. 200 years, 300 years, 400 years. Time slowly passed, and Ling Han was still unable to take the crucial step. This allowed him to understand that the reincarnation tree also had its limits. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had already consumed another Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, and with the help of the reincarnation tree and comprehending Tao, she advanced into the late stage of the pinnacle level. Another 3 years later, she finally advanced into the peak stage of the pinnacle level. Right now her cultivation level was equal to Ling Han's. However, this would soon become a thing of the past, because Ling Han had finally obtained enough comprehension of cultivation level. The door to the heavenly body tier was open to him. Chapter 1341. The heavenly body tier required the birth of stars in one's dantian. In theory, the sun and moon could also be considered stars, but on the path of cultivation, they were different. From the sun-moon tier to the heavenly body tier represented the evolution of one's inner world, becoming more and more complete. Just like how cultivators could fly without gravity, this was a qualitative leap, and flying across planets or even galaxies was an even more massive change. This was the case for the heavenly body tier. Now it was only condensing a single star, but the difficulty was incredibly high. Ling Han comprehended under the reincarnation tree for more than 2,000 years, before finally comprehending. This wasn't long at all. The longest lifespan of a sun-moon tier elite was 4 million years. But how many people at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier died of old age at this threshold? Countless. Even those who could cross over would have to spend at least 1 million years or so. Of course, there were also prodigies, such as the Stone Emperor and Qi Huangji, who could break through in 100 or 200 years, but that had to be with the help of some kind of treasure. Just like Ling Han, though he comprehended for more than 2,000 years, in reality, only 6 years had passed in the outside world. Completing the breakthrough in 6 years, no one would believe it if he told them. But Ling Han wasn't smug. He thought of Hunyao, and how many forces like the Rock Palace were there in the celestial realm. If they didn't take 5 years to nurture a Genesis tier cultivator, how many young prodigies were there in the whole celestial realm? For example, in a small world, the number of Shattering Void tier elites could be counted on one's fingers. But in the immortal realm, they could reach this level with a few years of cultivation, and in the celestial realm, many people were born at this cultivation level. Running out from a small world meant that they were destined to overcome all obstacles, and start from the lowest level. Ling Han didn't think this was a weakness. On the contrary, starting from the beginning would make his foundation more solid. Moreover, as long as the forces in the immortal realm had some foundation, they would send their juniors into a small world, and then open the sky to make up for their innate deficiencies. As these thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind, a bright spot of light lit up in his dantian, incredibly brilliant. This was the embryonic form of a star. Ling Han was filled with anticipation towards the heavenly body tier. Once he reached the heavenly body tier, he would be able to unlock the 5th level of the Black Tower and complete the 5 elements. He would then be able to further grasp the indestructible heaven scroll. Moreover, the notionless saint could also reform his body and walk out from the Black Tower. Although he was starting from scratch, the speed at which his power rose would definitely be terrifying. More importantly, only heavenly body tier elites could fly in the immortal realm. Come, Ling Han said, looking up at the sky. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he emitted a terrifying domineering aura. Boom! The thunderclouds immediately became denser, and one could vaguely see blazing white lightning churning within. There was even a hint of blue lightning, but it wasn't obvious. The power of the lightning was increasing. Ling Han had heard that the heavenly tribulation of a saint was completely blue lightning, and the reason why heavenly body tier elites could be called elites in the immortal realm was because the heavenly tribulation they passed contained wisps of blue lightning. It was only a wisp, but it caused a strong sense of danger to rise up in Ling Han's heart. It wasn't that he hadn't experienced the heavenly tribulation of heavenly body tier before. Previously, when he had battled with Xie Donglai, the latter had been in the middle of passing through heavenly tribulation, and had even tried to use the power of the heavenly tribulation to deal with him. However, the might of Xie Donglai's tribulation at that time was definitely not this powerful. This was very normal. One had broken through from the consummate level, while the other had broken through from the pinnacle level. Although the two of them were both passing through the heavenly body tier, the might of their heavenly tribulation was more than 10,000 times different. In Xie Donglai's tribulation clouds, the blue lightning was almost indiscernible. Moreover, these were merely splashes that splashed onto Ling Han's body, so the might of the lightning was naturally even weaker. Come. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. The stronger the heavenly tribulation, the stronger the might of the lightning that he could control. However, it was a pity that he didn't have enough godly metal to upgrade the divine demon sword. This was a great pity for him. Quang. As if it had sensed Ling Han's provocation, the first bolt of heavenly tribulation suddenly descended, transforming into a bolt of lightning that was as long as 30,000 meters and striking down. Ling Han was unafraid. His physique had already advanced to the height of level 9 godly metal, so even this heavenly tribulation that was clearly magnified by tens of thousands of times could not pose any threat to him. On the contrary, he had shattered his own godly bones and tempered his body in the heavenly tribulation. This was his true trial. In these 6 years, he had also tempered his body in the immortal flames more than 20 times, and his grasp of rising from the ashes had basically reached small success. Now, when he finished tempering his body in the immortal flames, he could already recover to the state of his body when he was about 18 years old. Even if there was still a slight gap, he already possessed all the functions that he should have. However, previously, he and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had always been cultivating in seclusion, and did not have the time to find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to show off. Comprehension continuously flashed through Ling Han's mind. He had already shattered into innumerable bone shards and minced flesh, like a nebula, but there was a mysterious power that allowed him to maintain his vitality. That was because he had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll to a certain level. Otherwise, if it was anyone else that had done this, they would definitely have suffered a great blow to their vitality. In the center of this nebula, there was an incredibly bright spot of light, and it was currently expanding. At the beginning, it was really only a spot of light, but now it was as big as a little finger, overflowing with the power of stars. This was Ling Han's first star. After opening this door, another world appeared in front of Ling Han's eyes. As long as he focused, he would be able to capture the trajectories that streaked across the heaven and earth. Those were the regulations of heaven and earth, and they would disappear in a flash. It was incredibly difficult to capture them, and thus, it would take a long time to grasp the regulations. When Ling Han captured these trajectories, the first thing he had to grasp was the power of flight. This wasn't difficult, because there were the most regulations related to flight. It streaked across the heaven and earth the most frequently. No wonder every heavenly body tier elite could fly. After all, this was the easiest ability to grasp. Half a day quickly passed. With a thought, Ling Han circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid, and he immediately recovered to his peak condition. "Rise," he said softly. His feet instantly left the ground, and he hovered in the air. He had broken free from the earth's restraints. Ling Han laughed loudly. With a thought, he soared into the air, traversing through the heaven and earth at an astonishing speed. Advancing from the sun-moon tier to the heavenly body tier was a qualitative change, so his speed would naturally be many times faster. From this moment onward, I can just barely be considered an elite. Ling Han exhaled, a smile appearing on his face. There were many things he had to do, but the first was to reconstruct Notionless Saint's body. Ling Han returned to the Black Tower, and he immediately discovered that this treasure tool was different. However, he couldn't tell what was different. Small Tower appeared and calmly said, "The 5 elements are complete, and it can be considered a true world." Ling Han didn't have time to ask for details, and he immediately said, "I want to reconstruct Notionless Saint's body. What should I do?" Chapter 1342. Simple. Gather the power of the 5 elements, and you'll be able to form a 5-element body, Small Tower said calmly. That made sense. The Black Tower was probably a supreme treasure in the celestial realm, and there were definitely saints everywhere in the celestial realm. In the eyes of Small Tower, the Notionless Saint was no more powerful than a dog. "Teach me," Ling Han said. This was something he had promised the Notionless Saint, so he naturally had to fulfill it. Small Tower passed on a mnemonic technique to him. It taught him how to gather the 5 elements and form a 5-element body. Moreover, it added a forbidden secret technique to this mnemonic technique. As long as it or Ling Han willed it, they would be able to destroy this 5-element body. This was a precaution. If the Notionless Saint didn't harbor any evil thoughts, then everything would be fine. However, what if he recovered his saint cultivation and tried to steal the Black Tower? Ling Han hesitated for a moment before agreeing to Small Tower's suggestion. One couldn't let one's guard down, so it was best to be more cautious. Moreover, if the Notionless Saint didn't harbor any evil thoughts, then this trump card would never have been activated. Alternatively, when Ling Han's cultivation level also reached the Genesis tier, there would naturally be no need to take him seriously. As long as he had all the necessary materials, forming a 5-element body would be extremely easy. Very soon, Ling Han had created a body, and then activated it with some kind of power from the Black Tower. This body possessed a powerful vitality. It didn't have a soul, so it couldn't be considered a life. However, it was the best material for possession. With a thought, Ling Han created another body like this one. This was prepared for the Azura Demon Emperor. "Senior, this is the 5-element body I promised you," Ling Han said as he placed this body under the reincarnation tree. The ball of light that the Notionless Saint had transformed into trembled violently. Although he was already mentally prepared, when this moment truly arrived, even a saint couldn't help but feel his heart waver. However, a saint was a saint after all. He had experienced countless trials and tribulations, so he quickly calmed his mind. With a flash, the ball of light that he had transformed into disappeared into this body. Pa! One of the fingers of the 5-element body moved slightly. Then it suddenly opened its eyes, and its upper body stood upright. Now this was the Notionless Saint. He raised his hand and waved it excitedly, his face showing a look of ecstasy. Even if he was a saint, he did not have the ability to reincarnate his remnant soul. Now he felt that he was weak but full of vitality. Even though this body was constructed from the 5 elements, It was no different from a mortal. The current notionless saint was just a mortal. However, this body possessed endless possibilities. It could cultivate to the shattering void tier, the heavenly body tier, and even the Genesis tier. Besides, with a thought from the notionless saint, an incredibly powerful aura immediately surged forth. This was the aura of a Genesis tier elite. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han naturally didn't need to fear the aura of Genesis tier cultivators. However, he sensitively discovered that the notionless saint was only putting on a strong front. This was indeed the aura of a saint. However, it did not possess any offensive power, and could only serve to scare others. If he were to encounter a rash and reckless person, then this notionless saint would definitely be beaten black and blue, revealing his true colors. There was no helping it. The notionless saint had already refined himself in the past, leaving behind only a clump of pure experience. Now that he had taken over this mortal body, it was only natural that he would no longer have the slightest bit of saint power. It was already very impressive that he could use this kind of aura to scare others. Senior, please recover your cultivation level as soon as possible. Ling Han had left behind some alchemical pills. With the abundant resources of the immortal realm and the miraculous godly medicines, these pills would be enough to allow the notionless saint to return to the mountain river tier in the shortest time possible. After reaching the mountain river tier, the notionless saint would have a complete set of cultivation experiences. He would only need to accumulate some origin power, and his cultivation level would naturally rise. Alright, go. Aye. The notionless saint was a little too excited, and he didn't even know how to address himself anymore. Go. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. At the very least, I have to reach the mountain river tier. Ling Han smiled, and summoned the Azura Demon Emperor with a thought. My noble master, you've summoned the incredibly loyal little Azura. What instructions do you have? The Azura Demon Emperor asked in the most fawning tone. His eyes were glowing. Master had broken through to the heavenly body tier. This was unbelievably fast. The more powerful his master was, the more he could use his master's power to intimidate others. Thus, he put on the most humble attitude in front of Ling Han in order to curry favor with Ling Han and obtain Ling Han's trust. Ling Han tossed out the 5-element body and said, "This will be your body from now on. Cultivate well." The Azura Demon Emperor didn't say another word, and immediately entered this body. Ling Han's words were like the golden rule to him. Master, why is this body so weak? However, he was immediately astonished. He had thought that Master had obtained a powerful body for him. Yet this body was pitifully weak. Of course it's weak. This is the body of a mortal, Ling Han said with a smile. Ah, the Azura Demon Emperor was confused. Ling Han said, although this body isn't powerful, it possesses true vitality. If you cultivate with this body, you'll be able to create endless possibilities. Although it's currently very weak, I believe that it won't be long before you surpass your current cultivation level. Furthermore, you're the soul of the demon realm, yet you have the body of the immortal realm. You're born with the ability to communicate with the two realms, and there's a high possibility that you'll grasp the regulations of both realms in the future and break through to the Genesis tier. The Azura Demon Emperor came to a realization and almost burst into tears. He said, "Thank you for your concern. Thank you for your love, Master. What virtue or ability does this little emperor have to receive such high hopes from Master? This little emperor will definitely do his best until the day of his death." Of course, these were just words. Only he himself knew how true and how false they were. Becoming a saint was an incredibly difficult thing, and he still had to advance to the next level. The Azura Demon Emperor naturally didn't have confidence in himself. His goal was very simple. He wanted to be Ling Han's dog, and then he could go around biting people. He was very confident in Ling Han, and thought that Ling Han would definitely become a saint in the immortal realm. If he entered the celestial realm, he would definitely become a big shot. Ling Han couldn't help but find this funny. However, his expression didn't change, and he said coldly, "Cultivate well." If I find that your progress is slower than the other side, I'll kill you. Ah! The Azura Demon Emperor screamed in agony. One had to realize that the notionless saint had once been a Genesis tier being. Even if they had to start from scratch now, the notionless saint's cultivation would definitely surpass his. Wasn't he dead for sure? Master, he said pitifully, a fawning expression written all over his face. If you have the time to flatter me, why don't you hurry up and cultivate? Ling Han said with a humph. Oh, the Azura Demon Emperor could only nod and run to the reincarnation tree to cultivate. It was time to settle the score with the 5 sects. Ling Han walked out of the plane, and his figure soared into the air. The abyss that had been before was no longer a problem for him. The evil creature that had exerted a suction force had already been slain, and he very quickly arrived on the ground. Chapter 1344. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "This is enough to prove that I know your father, right?" The young girl in red was mischievous, and circled around Ling Han again. She asked, "Where are you from? And why are you looking for my father? Could it be that you can no longer stay in your original place?" If you say so. Ling Han naturally would not lower himself to the same level as his grand disciple. He was still rueful. He did not look like a grandmaster at all. He was so young and so handsome. "Do you not like to talk?" The young girl was unrelenting. "How did you know my father?" Hee. Ling Han only smiled and did not answer. He discovered that this young girl was a bit difficult to deal with. "Come with me." The young girl blinked, and a mischievous glint flashed across her eyes. In Ling Han's eyes, however, he did not mind at all. His present strength was already enough to crush the entire Heaven Sword Palace. In front of absolute strength, no matter how many tricks this young girl played, it was all meaningless. The young girl turned around to lead the way, and Ling Han followed. I say, Uncle, can you fight?" The young girl asked somewhat expectantly. "I should be very good at fighting." Ling Han was not modest. It was indeed so. You said it yourself." A sly smile flashed across the young girl's face, and she led Ling Han to the front of a courtyard. She obviously did not have good intentions, and immediately gave a kick. Pung! The 2 large doors were forcefully kicked open by her. Obviously, the residents of the disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace did not have any protective formations. Otherwise, even though she was in the Mountain River tier, it would not have been so easy for her to kick open the doors. Ling Han knew that this young girl wanted to use him as a tool. He did not take it to heart either. He had come to the Heaven's Sword Palace to wreak havoc in the first place and disband this sect. There was no harm in starting from this step. Furthermore, if the matter became big, Jiang Yefeng would naturally appear as well. "Jiang Qiaoling, it's you again." An angry shout was heard from the courtyard. Immediately afterward, 7 people surged out almost at the same time, all of them looking fierce and fiendish. Jiang Qiaoling was naturally that red-clothed young girl, Jiang Yefeng's daughter. She pretended to be shocked and hid behind Ling Han. Then, she poked her head out and said, "You want to bully me? This is my uncle. He's super good at fighting." Ha ha ha. After the 7 of them glanced at Ling Han, they all laughed loudly, appearing to be disdainful. Ling Han restrained his aura. At first glance he looked extremely ordinary. If one were to talk about his handsomeness, what use would that be to these 7 grown men? Moreover, he was not the type who was shockingly handsome. Jiang Yefeng, on the other hand, was an extremely handsome man. Otherwise, he would not have been able to capture the hearts of the noble ladies of the Heaven's Sword Palace. "Uncle, these people are looking down on you. Didn't you say that you're pretty good at fighting? Teach them a lesson." Jiang Qiaoling fanned the flames from both sides, and did not mind addressing Ling Han as uncle at all. "Jiang Qiaoling, young Master Ling really likes you. Furthermore, your families are well matched. One is the descendant of great ancestor Yang, and the other is the descendant of great ancestor Ling. You're definitely a match made in heaven." Among the 7, a person with a red headscarf wrapped around his head said, "Please, Ling Yefeng is who knows how many years older than me. Back then, he liked my mother and wanted to marry my mother. Now he likes me and wants to marry me. Yo, just thinking about it gives me goosebumps all over. It's so disgusting. Jiang Qiaoling crossed her arms with an expression of extreme disgust. Even if I have to find someone to marry, I might as well find this uncle. She still did not forget to draw hatred for Ling Han. She was definitely doing it on purpose. And who are you, sir? The red headscarf asked Ling Han. My surname is Ni, and my name is Ye, Ling Han said casually. When these words were spoken, Jiang Qiaoling immediately snorted. She covered her small mouth with her hand and laughed hysterically. The red headscarf's mind did not move as fast as Jiang Qiaoling's. After muttering Ye a few times, he heard someone beside him remind him, Brother Bao, he's taking advantage of you, saying he's your grandfather. Fuck. The red headscarf immediately jumped up and glared angrily at Ling Han. You're tired of living, daring to even take advantage of me. Oh, are you very powerful? Ling Han asked calmly. Not powerful at all, Jiang Qiaoling hurriedly said. He's only a dog under Ling Yefeng's command, in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. Oh right, uncle, you wouldn't be unable to even defeat such trash, right? What if I can't? Ling Han asked with a smile. Then you'd be in trouble, because I've just advanced into the mountain river tier, and can't save you at all. Jiang Qiaoling stuck out her tongue. Just do your best to protect your face. I doubt they would dare to beat you to death. This was indeed Jiang Yefeng's daughter. The first thing she did after being beaten was to protect her face. Ling Han was very speechless. He shook his head and said, I don't have the habit of being beaten by others. What a coincidence, I don't either. Come, we get along quite well. Jiang Qiaoling nudged Ling Han with her elbow. Humph, then I'll just have to hit your face. The red headscarf strode out, and a fist shot out at Ling Han, aiming directly for his face. Ling Han took a step back. Shwa, this fist instantly hit empty air, and he lightly hooked with his foot. Pa! The red headscarf instantly fell to the ground. The force behind this kick was incredibly amazing. Borrowing the force of the red headscarf's punch, it turned into a collision with the ground, and as it crashed fiercely, the red headscarf fell face first onto the ground. Brother Bao. The other 6 people hurriedly went to help the red headscarf up. They saw that this guy's face was covered in blood. As it turned out, his 2 front teeth had actually been broken by the hard rocks when he crashed into the ground. This was because, firstly, the force of his crash was too strong, and secondly, he did not circulate his origin power to protect his body at all. Otherwise, he would not have ended up in such a miserable state. Yo, now I've been slapped in the face. Jiang Qiaoling immediately clapped her hands, then said to Ling Han, Uncle, you're so strong. Ling Han shrugged and said, It has nothing to do with me. I didn't hit anyone. The red headscarf and the others were all furious. This had nothing to do with you. If you didn't even stretch out your leg to trip him, would the red headscarf have ended up like this? Attack him together. The red headscarf flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a wave of his hand, he was the first to charge at Ling Han. The 7 of them were all ferocious, and did not feel any fear towards Ling Han because of the red headscarf's previous loss. In their eyes, it was the red headscarf himself who had been careless, which was why he was tripped by Ling Han and broke 2 of his front teeth. Jiang Qiaoling's skill in fanning the flames was top-notch, so of course she would not allow herself to be caught up in it. She hurriedly broke into a run while saying, Uncle, you can do it. Shwa shwa shwa. Wind from fists, wind from palms, sword chi, saber chi. Some of the 7 people used fists or palms, while others used sabers or swords, forming an encirclement. With his hands behind his back, Ling Han moved his feet, skillfully dealing with the 7 people's attacks with ease. Not only that, through his movements, he intentionally guided the 7 people to attack each other. Instantly, the 7 people shouted and screamed, appearing extremely chaotic. Chapter 1345. 7 mountain river tier cultivators joined forces to launch a barrage of attacks at Ling Han. However, Ling Han merely shifted his feet, and the attacks of these 7 cultivators were thrown into disarray. They continued to attack each other. All of a sudden, the scene was quite lively. Jiang Qiaoling couldn't help but be surprised. If one were to say that Ling Han's luck was good, then it was impossible that he would run into such great luck time and time again. However, if one were to say that Ling Han's abilities were so powerful, she would not believe it. Firstly, Ling Han didn't have the slightest aura of an elite, and secondly, if he were an elite, why would he need to rely on her father? But the truth was that the red headscarf and the others became more and more disorderly. Finally, they punched each other, and the most serious one was even slashed, his stomach split open. This time, they finally didn't dare to make another move, but looked at Ling Han with extreme wariness, feeling that this young man was too strange. I'm not playing anymore. Ling Han broke into a smile. Why not? Of course we're going to play. And we're going to play big. Jiang Qiaoling immediately shouted when she saw this. If she could use this chance to completely scare Ling Yefeng away, then she would have much peace in the future. The red headscarf and the others shook their heads repeatedly. They didn't want to play anymore. Didn't they see that they were beaten black and blue? And the most miserable one even had his intestines spilling out? Quick, go get reinforcements. The red headscarf kicked the person beside him. Yes, yes. That person nodded hurriedly and fled like a wisp of smoke. Don't run if you have the guts. The red headscarf goaded. He was afraid that Ling Han would escape. And then even if he got reinforcements, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Ling Han. After all, Yang Taizu's faction was also very powerful. Of course I won't run. What are you afraid of? Jiang Qiaoling placed her hands on her hips. Quick, go get Ling Yefeng. How will my uncle teach him how to behave? Ling Han simply didn't speak, and allowed Jiang Qiaoling to be his spokesperson. After a while reinforcements arrived. These were 3 in the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, exuding a powerful aura. Senior Brother Lu, Senior Brother Zhao, Senior Brother Ma. The red headscarf was overjoyed and hurriedly greeted the 3 of them. It's this brat who dares to look down on young Master Ling. Oh. Senior Apprentice Brother Lu took a few steps forward and swept his gaze over Ling Han. He couldn't help but reveal a look of disdain. He snorted and said, You can't even deal with such a person, and you still need the 3 of us to do it? His gaze swept over the 7 people with the red headscarf. All of them were covered in color. His displeasure deepened. There would definitely be factions within every sect. For example, they were both from the Ling faction, while Ling Han and Jiang Qiaoling were clearly from the Yang faction. Now that someone from the Ling faction was beaten up by someone from the Yang faction, they naturally felt embarrassed. Senior Brother Lu, the red headscarf said weakly. He also felt rather wronged. It was obvious that Ling Han's strength was not that great, but with just the movement of his feet, he had caused them to be in such a mess. It was embarrassing to say it out loud. Senior Apprentice Brother Lu waved his hand and stopped the red headscarf's words. No matter what, since someone from the Ling faction was beaten up, he naturally couldn't just stand by and watch. You kneel down. He pointed at Ling Han and said, his voice filled with an oppressive air of superiority. I'll give you a chance. As long as you kneel for 3 days and 3 nights, I'll let you off this time. Lu Dongdong, what are you being so cocky about? Do you think you're so great? Jiang Qiaoling couldn't help but start fanning the flames again. Uncle, you don't have to give me face. Beat him. Beat him until even his mother can't recognize him. My name is Lu Dongming. Senior Apprentice Brother Lu said loudly, the veins on his forehead bulging. Don't you think Lu Dongdong sounds better? Jiang Qiaoling's face was filled with innocence and innocence. But anyone who believed in her innocence would definitely be fooled until their head was spinning. Damn it. Lu Dongming couldn't help but reach out and grab Jiang Qiaoling. How quick-witted was Jiang Qiaoling? Since she was deliberately fanning the flames, how could she possibly not be on guard? She had been staying by Ling Han's side all along, and the moment Lu Dongming made a move, she immediately hid behind Ling Han, perfectly using Ling Han as a shield. Get out of the way! Lu Dongming shouted loudly. Ling Han didn't reply, but he didn't get out of the way either. To Lu Dongming, this was naturally a provocation. and he pressed his palm towards Ling Han. For wheels of mountains and rivers appeared on his body, turning into a frightening pressure. The release of the mountains and rivers increased the power of one's attack. Ling Han took a side step, and then very casually slapped out with his palm. However, whether it was the timing or the power, he had controlled it perfectly. There was clearly not much power behind it, but Lu Dongming couldn't help but charge forward, and with a bang, he also fell flat on his face. The red headscarf almost laughed out loud. You had just you called me a piece of trash, and didn't you also end up the same as yourself? But they were still on the same side after all. When facing an external enemy, he couldn't help but side with an outsider. Jiang Qiaoling, on the other hand, did not have such misgivings. She laughed loudly, and even started clapping and said, "Uncle, you are awesome. Now I believe that you are my father's friend, because you are just as treacherous as my father." Was there anyone who spoke of their own father like this? Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. Furthermore, he and Jiang Yefeng had absolutely nothing in common in terms of personality. All right? Lu Dongming crawled back up and looked at Ling Han with shock and uncertainty in his eyes. He didn't understand. Ling Han obviously hadn't used much power in that strike, and his speed wasn't very fast either. Why had he been struck by a palm strike and involuntarily tumbled out? He put himself in Ling Han's shoes, but no matter how he thought about it, he didn't think that he could have done it. It was precisely this kind of confusion that made him not dare to make another move. His thinking was correct. No one in the mountain river tier could possibly do what Ling Han had done just now. That was because what Ling Han had used was not power, but regulations. Only with regulations of a higher level would he be able to easily trample on a mountain river tier cultivator in a situation where his power wasn't obvious. Quick, go and ask for reinforcements," Lu Dongming said to the red headscarf. The red headscarf couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Why did these words sound so familiar? Wasn't it precisely what he had said to the lackey beside him previously? Now the person had changed, but the words hadn't. He hurriedly turned around and ran, going to find someone stronger. If even the consummate level was no match for him, then he could only go and ask for the help of a senior in the Sun Moon tier. "How should I address you, sir?" Lu Dongming asked darkly. Ling Han waved him off and said, "You are still not worthy to know." Lu Dongming almost exploded in fury. If he took another step forward, he would become a higher up of the Sun Moon tier. But he was actually waved off and berated by someone, as if he were some insignificant nobody. How could he stand it? Just you wait. When the elites of the Ling faction arrive, won't they suppress you like a dog? After a while, the red headscarf followed a middle-aged man over with quick steps. There was a red sun above this middle-aged man's head, and his expression was disdainful, appearing to be extremely proud. In the Heaven Sword Palace, Sun Moon tier elites were out-and-out elites, so it was very normal for them to be proud. This person's surname was Chung, and his name was Yuan. He belonged to the faction of the Ling family. Who the fuck is it? Chung Yuan was unhurried in the beginning, but when his eyes swept over Ling Han, he couldn't help but shout out loudly. Why was it this bringer of misfortune? Chapter 1346. Perhaps many low-level disciples of Heaven's Sword Palace didn't know who Ling Han was, but among the higher-ups, he was definitely famous, and everyone knew of him. The main culprit who opened the sky of the lower realm into the immortal realm. A freak who advanced into the Sun Moon tier in a short 10 years. A great enemy who had the ability to threaten the survival of the 5 sections. And now, this great enemy actually quietly came to Heaven's Sword Palace. Gasp! Cheng Yuan's hair was all standing on end. Because he was extremely nervous, his breathing had also become extremely unstable. Prung! The red headscarf was instantly unlucky. He was forcibly sent flying, landing face first on the ground. Instantly, a few more teeth were knocked out, causing him to feel extremely depressed. What had happened to him? Ling Han! Cheng Yuan cried out involuntarily. His voice was so sharp that it was almost impossible to tell that it came from a man's mouth. Ling Han! The other disciples were all baffled. Could it be that Uncle Cheng Yuan knew this young man? Wait, could it be that he was the descendant of great ancestor Ling? But why was he together with someone from the Yang clan? Could it be that this was a family scandal of the Ling family? Without another word, Cheng Yuan directly raised his hand. Pa! A firework instantly bloomed in the sky. This was not an ordinary firework, but a warning signal specially used by Heaven's Sword Palace. As the firework danced, a wave spread out in all directions, instantly covering the whole Heaven's Sword City. It even spread out several thousand miles, reaching the other 4 sections. The expressions of the red headscarf and the others changed drastically. In the warning signal of Heaven's Sword Palace, there were a total of 5 colors, which were crimson, red, green, blue, and purple. Purple was the least dangerous, and crimson was related to the survival of the sect. At most, they had seen the green signal. They had never even used the red signal, let alone the crimson one. Cheng Yuan would send out the crimson warning signal, obviously because of Ling Han, but such an ordinary young man. Was he really such a great threat that could affect the survival of Heaven's Sword Palace? Xiao xiao xiao. In that instant, a few dozen figures flew over, and the number was still increasing. The 5 sects were relatively luckier. After the netherworld retreated, the majority of their members had also returned to their sections. None of their Sun-Moon tier elites dared to leave their sects, as they were constantly on guard against Ling Han's possible attack. Thus, they had managed to avoid a calamity because of this. Now that there was a red alert, the experts naturally came in droves. Ling Han! It's that kid! Damn it, he actually dared to come here. Activate the Grand Formation, and bring out the ancestral item to kill him. A group of people were shouting and yelling. They were all great figures in the eyes of those disciples. People who wouldn't even frown even if a mountain collapsed before them. But now, all of them were extremely nervous, and they were no different from ordinary people. This caused the red headscarf and the others to be dumbstruck. Just who was this person in front of them? Could he be a malefic star? Xiao, come back. An elder appeared and said to Jiang Qiaoling solemnly. This was the leader of the Yang faction. His name was Yang Jin, and he was also Jiang Qiaoling's maternal great-great-grandfather. When he saw that his own descendant was standing together with the malefic star, Ling Han, he instantly felt his hair stand on end. He thought that this girl was truly audacious. Jiang Qiaoling couldn't help but be shocked. This old friend of her father was too awesome, wasn't he? He had actually alarmed so many experts in the sect. Had something like this ever happened before? At least, as far as she knew, it had never happened before. Though she was usually mischievous and very willful, seeing how stern Yang Jin was, she didn't dare to go against him. She immediately walked towards Yang Jin, and couldn't help but turn her head back. She felt that Ling Han had delicate features, and didn't look like a malefic person at all. Only when Jiang Qiaoling returned to his side did Yang Jin finally breathe a sigh of relief. He felt that though Ling Han was unpardonably wicked, at least he was open and aboveboard when doing things, and didn't take the weak hostage. Ling Han, you really are audacious. You even dare to barge into the Heaven's Sword Palace. Aren't you afraid of dying here? An elder said darkly. He was the leader of the Ling faction, Ling Kongcheng. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Go and call Jiang Yefeng over. I have something to ask him. Humph, you've come to our sect, and you still want to order people around? Yang Jin humphed. At this time, the Great Mountain Barrier Formation had already been activated, and the ancestral tool of the Heaven's Sword Palace had also been summoned. With a xiao, it flew out from a certain corner of the city, and hovered in the air, exuding a frightening might. This Great Mountain Barrier Formation had been strengthened for who knew how many years, and so had the ancestral tool. Any one of them could match the middle stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, or even the peak stage. And if the two of them were combined, they could amplify each other, and their might would be even higher, able to match the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. In other words, if they fought in the Heaven's Sword Palace, it would be equivalent to them possessing an elite of the heavenly body tier, though it was only at the level of the early stage of the low extreme. But from the Sun-Moon tier to the heavenly body tier, how astonishing was this step! Once the two great weapons were unleashed, the members of the Heaven's Sword Palace were finally certain. Now Ling Han only had two paths to take, fight or flee. But regardless of whether he fought or fled, the ending would not change. And that was that he was destined to die here. He was really walking right into a trap. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "All those years ago, when I was still in the lower realm, I saw one of you here. 20 years later, I have finally seen the true appearance of you beasts, and I am very rueful." "How dare you?" another elder shouted. Behind him, 4 suns and moons appeared, exuding a scorching aura that caused the air around him to immediately start burning. The others also showed expressions of fury. He had come to the Heaven's Sword Palace, and actually dared to rebuke them as beasts. This was really too arrogant. Could it be that he did not know that he was currently in the middle of a supreme killing formation, and there was also an ancestral tool above his head targeting him? Meanwhile, Jiang Qiaoling showed an expression of admiration. Regardless of whether Ling Han was friend or foe, merely this heroic spirit of his was worthy of admiration. However, why was this man also called Ling Han? It should be known that this was the name of her father's master. Furthermore, Ling Han said that he was an old friend of her father, so it should be absolutely impossible that he had the same name as her ancestor. Could it be? A thought surged up in her mind, but she hurriedly shook her head. That was too exaggerated. How could this brat possibly be her father's master? If her father found out that she had been calling him uncle for so long, he would definitely spank her buttocks. Wasn't this deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors? Activate the killing formation and kill this brat, Yang Jin said in a low voice. All right, I will take charge of the ancestral tool, Ling Kongqing said. Though he and Yang Jin had fought for most of their lives, they still stood together in the face of a common enemy. This internal strife was internal strife, and what they were fighting for was power. However, if they still could not unite when facing an external enemy, then the Heaven's Sword Palace would be gone. So how could there be any chance for internal strife? 8th Spirit Heavenly Ghost, Yang Jin tapped his forehead. Wang. The formation that enveloped the entire Heaven's Sword City immediately activated, and a massive black humanoid monster appeared. It was at least 300 meters tall, and it held a short staff in its hand. The moment it appeared, it exuded an extremely ferocious and evil aura, causing even the heaven and earth to lose color. What an evil thing! Chapter 1348. A good story. The divine sword struck down. This was an attack on the level of the heavenly body tier, and was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han raised his hand and waved lightly. There was clearly no energy fluctuation, but this strike became lighter and lighter, and finally turned into a gentle breeze and drizzle. Tide of the Ages. This was not an inheritance extracted from Ding Zizhen's remnant bloodline, but rather from Ding Ling's complete memories. It was a true celestial technique. Ling Han had spent more than 2,000 years to break through to the heavenly body tier, and had also completely grasped Tide of the Ages. There was clearly no energy fluctuation when his palm struck, yet the attack that struck him instantly aged, no longer having any power. Jiang Yufeng naturally would not wait to be slaughtered. He had long since been prepared, and shot out a punch. Pung! The divine sword was instantly deflected by him, directly shooting up 100 zhang into the air. It even caused the evil ghost to stagger, and almost fall on its bottom. What was going on? To say nothing of the members of the Heaven's Sword Palace being stunned, even Jiang Yefeng was puzzled, scratching his head. When had he become so powerful? Yefeng! Chen Di cried tears of joy, hugging her lover from behind. She had initially thought that she would never see her lover again after this strike, but she had never imagined that her lover would actually show such great might, causing her eyes to glow. Father, you're so powerful, Jiang Qiaoling also exclaimed in surprise. Who didn't know how awesome this great protective formation and divine sword was? They could rival low-level heavenly body tier elites. Going by this logic, Jiang Yefeng was an elite of the heavenly body tier. Everyone looked at Jiang Yefeng with reverence. To the Heaven Sword Palace, There was no difference between the heavenly body tier and the Genesis tier. They were both invincibly powerful beings. But Chen Jin and the others did not believe it. Jiang Yefeng's aura was clearly at the sun-moon tier, and it was at the low extreme. If they could not even confirm this, then they should all go buy a block of tofu and kill themselves. Damn it, how could the evil spirit's strike be knocked back? Ling Han? That was impossible. Though he had indeed waved his hand, there was no fluctuation of origin power. So how could he have dispersed the attack of a heavenly body tier elite? To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han was only at the sun-moon tier. Even if he had reached the heavenly body tier, he still wouldn't be able to overwhelm Ling Han with his strength. That being the case, he would still have to use his full strength. Of course, this was because they were limited by their horizons. Rules were also a part of one's combat strength. As long as one's grasp of rules was strong enough, they would be able to unleash terrifying might without using any physical strength. Again, Ling Kongqing barked. Suddenly, a dozen or so people activated their formations and god tools at the same time. The evil spirits regained their morale and brandished their swords. Boom! The pressure of the heavenly body tier completely suppressed them, and it was as if heaven and earth were about to collapse. Jiang Yefeng gritted his teeth and still threw out a punch. He had to make every possible effort in a desperate situation. Ling Han smiled inwardly. With a wave of his hand, he executed Tide of the Ages once more. The evil spirit's strike arrived, as gentle as the spring breeze. Pung! Jiang Yufeng's fist met the attack, but it was like an enraged dragon emerging from the sea, bouncing off the divine sword. The force traveled along the blade of the divine sword and onto the body of the evil ghost, lifting it up as well. Its body tilted backwards and finally fell heavily onto the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded. Once might be a coincidence, but twice. There was no such coincidence in this world. If it was too much of a coincidence, then it would be reasonable. Jiang Yefeng could rival heavenly body tier elites? One had to realize that he was only in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier, yet he could battle an opponent in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Moreover, he had a huge advantage. How awesome was this? Genius. No, super genius. Even super wasn't enough to describe such a freak. What kind of 5-star genius was this? Could he compare to Jiang Yefeng? He had already skipped a whole major tier, a whole 16 stars. Even Jiang Yefeng started to doubt himself. Had he taken the wrong medicine this morning? Why was he so ferocious? Yefeng, though this person is your master, you've only been friends for a few hundred years. However, our sect has treated you well and nurtured you for a whole 10,000 years. Moreover, you've even married a disciple of our Heaven Sword Palace. Is this still enough to make you submit? Ling Kongqing immediately asked. Previously, Jiang Yefeng had been a traitor in his eyes, but now, this traitor was so powerful that it was nature-defying. Thus he naturally changed his attitude. This kind of freak was too important to the Heaven Sword Palace. Not only could he help the Heaven Sword Palace become the leader of the 5 sects, he could also open up a whole new world. No matter how flashy and arrogant Jiang Yefeng was, he was still clear about his own strength. This was definitely not something he could do. Thus he turned around and asked Ling Han, "Master, what's wrong?" The 5 sects concocted a realm pill. This is unforgivable and must be eradicated. Otherwise, how can we explain to the souls of the deceased? Ling Han said calmly. Disciple understands, Jiang Yefeng said respectfully. Damn it. Ling Kongqing looked at Ling Han and said, Sir, your surname is also Ling. Perhaps we even had the same ancestor in the ancient era. Since that is the case, why must you be so overbearing? Fuck, you can even say something so shameless. Ling Han couldn't help but be amused and said, Old man, I've witnessed the thickness of your skin again. Fine, I'm not a bloodthirsty person. From today onwards, the Heaven Sword Palace will be disbanded, and everyone above the immortal level will cripple their own cultivation. As for the person who made the decision to concoct the realm pill, he must die. Ling Kongqing's expression immediately darkened. This was too much, because he was one of the main culprits who had made the decision to concoct the realm pill. Not only did he want him dead, But he also wanted the Heaven Sword Palace to be disbanded. And everyone above the immortal level had to cripple their own cultivation. You must be dreaming. If that is the case, then we can only fight to the death. He gave up on his delusions. It was obvious that Ling Han did not intend to resolve this peacefully. Go! He shouted loudly, and the evil ghost leapt out again, swinging its sword in a frenzy. He did not believe that Jiang Yefeng was really so ferocious. Since Ling Han already knew that Jiang Yefeng had not been tainted by the Heaven Sword Palace for the past 10,000 years, there was naturally no need for him to keep a low profile. He took a step forward and punched out, meeting the evil ghost head-on. It was incomparably simple, just a single punch. Pung! However, this punch was too domineering. The power of the punch transformed into a streak of light and blasted into the evil ghost's chest. The frightening power of the impact directly disintegrated the evil ghost, and the divine sword also fell from the sky. Ling Han grabbed it, and it returned to its normal size of 1 meter. This divine sword immediately shone with a ferocious light, wanting to struggle free. Sword chi surged, and its destructive power was astonishing. Humph! Ling Han humphed softly and said, "Still trying to resist?" His physique was too terrifying, and it was even slightly stronger than level 10 godly metal. Meanwhile, this divine sword was only level 8, so how could it be a match for Ling Han? It was forcefully suppressed by him, and instantly released a mournful wail, the blade of the sword trembling violently. Ling Han had lost his patience, and directly used brute force. Pa! This divine sword was forcibly snapped in two by him. Seeing this scene, everyone's mouths gaped open, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Breaking a god weapon with his bare hands. What kind of monster was this? At this moment, everyone finally understood that Jiang Yefeng was actually not a freak. He was just an ordinary cultivator at the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. And the abnormal one was this malefic star. Chapter 1349. All of a sudden, the elites of Heaven's Sword Palace were left with only bitterness and terror. Their two greatest pillars, the Great Mountain Protection Formation, had been shattered by a single punch from Ling Han, and their ancestral tool had been directly snapped by Ling Han. What could they do now? They could only wait for their deaths. Jiang Qiaoling's eyes lit up. This ancestor was too fierce, wasn't he? In future, with the reputation of ancestor, wouldn't she be able to do whatever she wanted? One last chance. The culprit must be killed, and the others can have a chance to live, Ling Han said calmly. But the aura that belonged to an elite of the heavenly body tier circulated endlessly. This was a suppression on the level of life. To say nothing of sun-moon tier elites. Even if they were in the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, Ling Han, a 6-star genius, could easily suppress them. Ling Kongqing looked at Qin Jin, and the two old guys' eyes met, instantly exchanging some kind of thought. Xiao! Ling Kongqing suddenly leaped out, killing intent blazing, but his target was not Ling Han, but Qin Jin. This was too sudden. Who would have thought? The old guy pressed a hand on Qin Jin's head, and coldly said, Qin Di, if you still want your ancestor to live, immediately tell him to stop. This, Jiang Yefeng and Qin Di were both shocked to the point of being unable to accept this. This old guy had once again raised his shamelessness to a new height. Dear save me. Qin Jin was very cooperative, tears streaming down his face as he looked pitifully at Qin Di. Farce. Ling Han's expression was cold, and he said, Enough, there's no need for such a clumsy performance. The two of you are the culprit, and the only path left for you is death. So why not die with some dignity? What was dignity? Was it edible? Ling Kongqing stared at Ling Han, and loudly said, Ling Han, this is the ancestor of your disciple's wife, and you're not going to save him? Don't you feel ashamed of your disciple? Ashamed your sister? Ling Han was really impatient. He stretched out a hand and pressed down. Ling Kongqing's expression involuntarily became stern. This was not enough to threaten Ling Han either. He had not done enough. He suddenly exerted force and pa. Qin Jin's head instantly shattered, and a human-shaped ball of light flew out. This was Chen Jin's spirit. His face was filled with fury and shock. He had not expected Ling Kongqing to actually dare to kill him. However, before he could even open his mouth to curse, his spirit had already been grabbed by Ling Kongqing. Without a body, how could a mere spirit rival an elite of the same cultivation level? Don't force this old man, Ling Kongqing shouted. Stupid bird, Ling Han was merciless, and his palm pressed down. Pa, Ling Kongqing's physical body was instantly shattered. How could he have the chance to attack? His divine soul also flew out. As long as he reached the god level, even without the support of a physical body, his divine soul would be able to survive for a certain period of time, long enough to find a body to possess. Right now Ling Kongqing had also become a divine spirit. However, Chen Jin did not fight him. Instead, they suddenly split up and flew off in two different directions. Without the support of a physical body, one's divine soul was extremely weak. However, it was also not restricted by a physical body. Not only was its speed faster, but it could also fly. They wanted to escape. Even if they were only possessing an ordinary person, they would at least be able to live for a few dozen years. At most, they could just switch again. Can you escape? Ling Han snapped his fingers. Xiao xiao, two bolts of lightning shot out at incredible speed. This was the might of heavenly tribulation that he had mastered. Moreover, just how fast was heavenly tribulation? Was there anyone in this world who could dodge heavenly tribulation? No. Chen Jin and Ling Kongqing were naturally no exception. Very quickly, they were caught up by the lightning. Pa! They were blasted into dust, leaving not a single trace behind. Ling Han stepped forward, under the envelopment of the aura of the heavenly body tier. The members of the Heaven Sword Palace all knelt on the ground. No one could resist him. I'll give you half a day's time. The culprit must commit suicide, and all immortal level members must cripple their own cultivation. From now on, the Heaven Sword Palace will cease to exist. Otherwise, I will personally make a move. At that time, not even a blade of grass will remain. Compared to the 5 sects, who had refined the living beings of an entire realm into alchemical pills, Ling Han's current method was incredibly benevolent. This was because he was not bloodthirsty. Let's go, Ling Han said to Jiang Yefeng. Yes, master, Jiang Yefeng hurriedly said. Ling Han took the lead, and Jiang Yefeng followed behind. Meanwhile, Chen Di and Jiang Qiaoling lagged further behind. They found a place in the city to sit down, and let the master and disciple catch up. However, Jiang Yefeng's experience was very simple. Though he had already stayed in the immortal realm for 10,000 years, he had basically never left his residence. The greatest achievement he had made was establishing the Cold Spear Association in the lower realm. It was very difficult to travel from the immortal realm to a small world, but it was relatively easy to simply send some lifeless objects over. Thus, he was able to transmit his divine will and establish a force across realms. Half a day later, Ling Han once again arrived at the Heaven Sword Palace. The majority of the culprit had been executed. Because they had descendants, they did not dare to risk their lives. However, there were also those who hoped to be lucky. They either fled alone, or brought their descendants with them out of the city. This time, Ling Han was no longer merciful. He moved without mercy, and killed all of these people. Blood permeated the air, and the stench of blood could be smelled everywhere in the city. In just a single day, the once dominant Heaven Sword Palace no longer existed, and had completely disappeared in the long river of history. However, Ling Han did not continue to visit the remaining 4 sections. Instead, he first returned to find Yun Yong Wang, Feng Piyun, and the others. The destruction of the 5 sects should be witnessed by more people of the lower realm. Coincidentally, Chen Ruijing had also returned. When he saw Ling Han, he knelt down from afar, incredibly excited. The old ginseng and rabbit had actually also arrived. Once they arrived, Ling Han laughed and said that he was not a short-lived person and had indeed escaped with his life. However, Jiang Yefeng was not well received. In the eyes of Chen Ruijing and the others, Jiang Yefeng was an out-and-out traitor. and had actually joined the Heaven's Sword Palace. With Ling Han consoling them from the side, coupled with Jiang Qiaoling's cheekiness, calling them senior uncle and senior uncle, the three of them finally dispelled their filth. After all, they had been brothers for over 100 years, so how could there possibly be an unresolvable grudge between them? Next, they all charged towards the remaining 4 sections. The Heavenly Phoenix sect, the Blue Thunder sect, and the Absolute Saber sect were all successfully razed to the ground. The culprits were executed, while the remaining ones had their cultivation crippled and could no longer commit evil. Finally, it was the Earth Dragon sect. Their group charged to the foot of the mountain, because they had already passed the Cloud Phoenix sect. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had also exited the Black Tower, and was called Mistress by Jiang Yefeng and the others. They were trying to curry favor with her, and were a dozen times more respectful than they were to Ling Han. Ding Ping had not experienced that period of time, and couldn't help but feel strange. Why were his 4 senior brothers so respectful to this mistress? However, he knew that there were a few other mistresses that had long since been brought into the celestial realm. Thus, he silently prayed for his master, hoping that his master's family could live in harmony in the future. The Earth Dragon sect was built in a swamp, and the majority of its disciples possessed the bloodline of the Earth Dragon. Of course, there were also pure humans, but because they were not suited to cultivate the cultivation techniques of the Earth Dragon sect, there were very few elites that could emerge. Now, the doors of the Earth Dragon sect were tightly shut, as if expressing that they did not welcome the arrival of Ling Han and the others. Peng! The old ginseng kicked open the doors and loudly shouted, "Beauties of the Earth Dragon sect, come. Hand over your undergarments." Grandpa Ginseng is someone who has tender, protective feelings for the fairer sex. Chapter 1350. The Earth Dragon sect was already prepared. After the doors were kicked open, there was a dense crowd inside. "Ling Han, you've gone too far." An elder stepped out. Black mist rose around him, forming into the shape of numerous earth dragons. They were incredibly dense, and anyone who saw them would feel extremely disgusted. "You people refine the souls of an entire realm into pills. Is that too much?" Feng Puyin humphed, his black hair standing on end. He appeared to be incredibly furious. His cultivation level had also advanced rapidly, but due to the limitations of time, even with the alchemical pills provided by Ling Han, he had only just advanced to the high extreme of the mountain river tier. The elder looked at Feng Puyin with disdain. Putting aside the fact that Feng Puyin hadn't advanced to the sun-moon tier, he didn't take anyone below the consummate level of the sun-moon tier seriously. "Humph, do you have the right to speak in front of me?" he said disdainfully. Ling Han humphed and said, "Do you have the right to act like you're old in front of me?" Boom! His aura surged toward the elder. Pa! The elder's body instantly went limp, and he involuntarily knelt down. However, he still had some backbone, and he forcefully twisted his body so that he was sitting on the ground. Although this was also very humiliating, it was many times better than kneeling down. "You really are Ling Han," a young man said from the crowd, his face filled with astonishment. "So it's Brother Nalen." Ling Han's eyes swept over him, and he nodded slightly. That young man was Nalen too, a king tier who had been as famous as him 10,000 years ago. However, his talent was clearly inferior to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the Sword Emperor, and the others. In fact, it was even inferior to Jiang Yefeng and Chen Ruijing. Right now, he was only at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, and hadn't advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. After a long period of time, there were also different levels of prodigies. Nalen too smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't think that you'd become so strong. In the past, I could suppress you with a single strike." Ling Han's expression darkened. A true man doesn't boast about his past achievements, but can you people not keep poking at his old wounds? So what if he was weak back then? Didn't you see that he still had another identity? He was the Alchemy Emperor. Which one of you hasn't asked him to concoct alchemical pills for you? Ling Han, I advise you to come back to where you came from. The Earth Dragon sect isn't a place where you can act presumptuously. Another elder stood up and coldly warned Ling Han. Ling Han was quite surprised. The news of the other 4 sects disbanding must have already reached the Earth Dragon sect. However, why were all of them so calm and confident? It was as if they were truly confident. Where did this confidence come from? "Oh, do you have anything to rely on?" he asked with a smile. "Wait patiently for a while, and you will know," the second old man said. Ling Han didn't pay any attention to them and said, "According to the rules, I'll give you a chance. The main culprit who formulated the realm pill concoction plan all those years ago must die. Those above the deity level, cripple your own cultivation. From today onwards, disband the Earth Dragon sect, and you will be able to preserve your lives. I'll give you half a day's time." After saying this, Ling Han and the others sat down at the entrance of the Earth Dragon sect. They retrieved the ingredients from the Black Tower and began to barbecue. Meanwhile, the old ginseng snuck in and said, "Grandpa Ginseng is lacking a few leg massaging girls. Your good fortune has come. Sit beside Grandpa Ginseng and take a few breaths. I guarantee that you will be invigorated, and your cultivation will advance rapidly. If Grandpa Ginseng is satisfied, I'll shoot some of my essence." "Won't you die from pleasure?" The female disciples of the Earth Dragon sect glared at him in anger. They felt that this old ginseng was far too shameless and despicable. Time slowly passed. Although Ling Han ate with the others, he spread out his divine sense and observed the entire Earth Dragon sect. However, he didn't discover any heavenly body tier cultivators. Moreover, he didn't believe that the Earth Dragon sect could invite Eternal River tier cultivators. After around 4 hours, Ling Han suddenly discovered that a warship was currently sailing in their direction. It was extremely fast, and it was also extremely large. He opened the Eye of Truth and looked up into the sky. He saw that a warship that was as long as 30,000 meters had appeared in the distant sky. It was like a massive dark cloud, and in the blink of an eye, it had grown from a small dot to the size of a fist. It was clear how fast it was. Such a large warship could completely be regarded as a starship. However, it was clearly a warship. There was a flag at the bow of the warship, on which was a ferocious tiger that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. There was also a Zhao character on the flag. The flag fluttered in the wind, exuding an indescribable intimidating aura. This was because the Zhao character on the flag had definitely been drawn by a supreme elite. It contained that person's martial art intent, and it was powerful enough to crush heavenly body tier cultivators into pieces. Ling Han was astonished. Could it be that the Earth Dragon sect could truly invite an Eternal River tier elite? However, the problem was, what could the Earth Dragon sect offer that could tempt even an Eternal River tier force? After a while, the massive warship finally drew near, allowing the others to see it. The members of the Earth Dragon sect instantly looked pleasantly surprised, while the expressions of Feng Piyun and the others became much more solemn. The Earth Dragon sect should have already known that Ling Han had advanced to the heavenly body tier by now. Thus, the helper they had invited would at least be at the heavenly body tier. The warship stopped, and a horse-drawn carriage descended from it. The mounts were 2 white horses, but they had wings and a single horn on their heads. Each of these horses was 30 meters tall, and they appeared incredibly mighty. "Ethereal dragon horses," someone exclaimed in astonishment. He had recognized these 2 majestic mounts. Ethereal dragon horses were extremely rare demonic beasts. When they matured, they could even reach the heavenly body tier. Gasp! To use ethereal dragon horses as mounts. What kind of extravagance was this? Although Ling Han raised his eyebrows in astonishment, he wasn't astonished. They had all seen semi-sentient saintly material used as mounts, and another piece of saintly material used as carriages. In that case, what could mere heavenly body tier ethereal dragon horses amount to? The carriage quickly descended from the sky. It was extremely luxurious, and there were all kinds of godly materials hanging from it. All of them were at least level 10, such as 10,000-year-old purple pearls, 1,000 shadow spider silk, damaged beast horns, and so on. The members of the Earth Dragon sect had never seen such an extravagance before, and they couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. They thought that they had made the right move by inviting this person from the Zhao clan. The carriage stopped, and the two ethereal dragon horses raised their hooves in the air, a look of arrogance on their faces. Ling Han involuntarily rubbed his hands together. There was a considerable amount of rare godly metal hanging from this carriage, which was perfect for his divine demon sword to devour. This was great. He was determined to deal with this tribulation. Creak. The carriage door opened, and a beautiful woman walked out. She was followed by another, and another, and another, and another. After a total of 12 women had walked out, they all knelt down and used their bodies to form a staircase. Only at this moment did a man walk out, and he stepped onto the backs of these women as he descended from the carriage. "Fuck you!" The old ginseng couldn't help but shout. Even Grandpa Ginseng doesn't have a few women to serve upon him. This brat is far too arrogant. Little Han, beat him up for Grandpa Ginseng. Chapter 1352. Where are the Earth Armor Guards? Zhao Ku called out softly. Instantly, multiple chariots flew down from the warship and lined up neatly behind him. Each chariot had 12 fully armored warriors on it. Their expressions were stern, and they exuded a murderous aura. Their cultivation level was not high, and they were only at the mountain river tier. However, when hundreds or thousands of them stood together, they exuded a terrifying aura that would cause even Sun-Moon tier elites to frown. Zhao Ku pointed and said, "Get into formation and kill the enemies." Shwa! The warriors all jumped down from the chariots and began to run quickly. They crisscrossed each other, and the thousands of them seemed to have become one, like a wriggling snake. The armor on their bodies shone and became one. It fused their power together and increased it by thousands of times. This was a very mystical formation. Ling Han could keenly feel that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was being madly absorbed by them, from the earth and the sky. This was the key to their increase in power. If it were any other person, absorbing spiritual qi so madly would definitely be in trouble. Their body would not be able to withstand it, and their physique would directly explode. However, these people used the connection of the formation to evenly distribute the pressure to everyone. In this way, their endurance would also increase by thousands of times. Interesting. Ling Han smiled. This kind of formation could be learned by the soldiers of the Great Ling Empire and increase their overall battle prowess. "Master, let me fight!" Ding Ping immediately called out. He had already reached the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, and his battle prowess was not much weaker than the Sun Moon tier. "Master, disciple requests to fight," Chen Ruijing and the others said. They could not let their little junior brother monopolize the limelight. Ling Han nodded with a smile and said, "All right." The 5 disciples all charged out. Before this, the 3 sects had all surrendered when they saw Ling Han, so they did not have a chance to attack. It was rare that the Earth Dragon sect dared to fight back, so their hands were naturally itching. "Haha, 4th brother, you stay back." "My hands are also itching," Feng Puyun said with a smile. "4th brother, I'll leave this place to you." Murongqing was also eager to take action. They were all from the lower realm, and if it wasn't for Ling Han splitting open the sky, they would probably have been refined into a realm pill by now. Naturally, they were all filled with fury towards the 5 sects, and they would be displeased if they didn't personally fight them to their heart's content. The 2 of them also charged out. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded at Ling Han, indicating that she would stand guard for Ling Han, and that Ling Han only needed to deal with Zhao Ku. Feng Puyun's group of 7 threw themselves into the enemy's army, and were almost instantly drowned, appearing extremely weak and alone. In terms of individual battle prowess, although Feng Puyun and Mu Rongqing hadn't broken through to the Sun Moon tier, they had both advanced to the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. They definitely wouldn't be afraid of any soldiers. In fact, they could even easily defeat 10 of them. However, these soldiers had combined their battle prowess through some kind of formation, and possessed the battle prowess of the Sun-Moon tier. This was definitely not something that Feng Piyun and Mu Rongqing could match. It wasn't long before they were covered in blood. Fortunately, Ding Ping and the others naturally took care of the two uncles and ensured their safety. This caused Feng Piyun and Mu Rongqing to feel suffocated. When they were in the lower realm, they were both prodigies and elites, yet now they actually needed the protection of juniors. They stimulated their fighting spirit and fought with all their might. In this kind of state, as long as they could survive until the end of the battle, their battle prowess would definitely increase greatly. Ling Han only swept a glance over, and then relaxed. His gaze was like a sword as he looked at Zhao Ku. I, Zhao Ku, have never been unable to obtain what I want, Zhao Ku said confidently. Zhao Ku said confidently, I'm definitely going to play with this woman. However, why do you have to mind? I'm only playing with her for a few days, a few years at most. There's no woman in this world that can tie me down. Moreover, with this relationship, who knows, if you have any request in the future, I might even lend you a hand, Zhao Ku said confidently. He sneered. This was naturally to deliberately embarrass Ling Han. Ling Han formed a sword with his fingers and struck out at Zhao Ku, saying, Villains die because they talk too much. Shua. The power of lightning transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot towards Zhao Ku. In this world, who could escape the lightning of heavenly tribulation? Pa! Zhao Ku was completely caught off guard, and a flash of white light flashed across his chest. There was a hint of blue in it, and instantly, shredded cloth flew into the air. Zhao Ku's protective origin power was unable to block the invasion of the lightning. However, amidst the fluttering cloth, it could be seen that there was actually a silver armor on Zhao Ku's chest. This battle armor was covered in divine patterns, and at this moment, it was shining brightly, completely blocking Ling Han's power of lightning. Zhao Ku looked down, and couldn't help but laugh loudly. This is the silver dragon battle armor that my father bestowed upon me, and its material is forged from level 13 godly metal. Unless your power has broken through to the Eternal River tier, there is absolutely no way that you can damage it. In addition, my father harvested a drop of blood essence from the divine beast moon turtle and refined it into godly metal. It has extremely powerful defensive properties. If you can't damage the battle armor, then you can't damage the defensive properties of the battle armor. And if you can't damage the defensive properties of the battle armor, then you can't harm a single hair on my head. I'm naturally invincible, so how can you fight against me? He didn't mind revealing the secret of the silver dragon battle armor, because he was sure that no one below the Eternal River tier could do anything to him. This was indeed troublesome. Ling Han frowned. Level 13 godly metal was fine. No matter how hard it was only its body, and couldn't damage godly metal. However, under the impact of power, it could still cause great damage. However, the problem was that there was a drop of blood essence from the moon turtle on this piece of godly metal, which had been refined into a protective armor. This formed a defensive barrier. There were actually two ways to break through a defensive barrier. The first was to destroy the intrinsic nature of the barrier, and the second was to break through level 13 godly metal. However, the problem was that both of these methods required power on the level of the Eternal River tier, and Ling Han was only in the low extreme of the Heavenly Body tier. Phew, why is it so difficult to kill someone? Ha ha ha, are you helpless? Are you in despair? Zhao Ku laughed loudly. He loved destroying his opponent's willpower the most. Seeing his opponent in despair would give him a strong sense of satisfaction. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Perhaps the one feeling helpless is you? Zhao Ku faltered for a moment before laughing loudly, and saying, Are you stupid? How is that possible? Why is it impossible? Ling Han charged forward, yet his target wasn't Zhao Ku. Instead, he was targeting the Earth Dragon sect. He threw a punch, and a terrifying power surged out. Pa 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 pa. Many people from the Earth Dragon sect were instantly blasted apart, their bodies destroyed. Zhao Ku couldn't help but fly into a rage. He naturally didn't care about the lives of these people from the Earth Dragon sect, but rather that he had been disregarded by Ling Han. He actually dared to disregard him. Zhao Ku roared in anger and opened his mouth to spit out a small sword. However, it grew in the wind and turned into a 3-foot-long blade. He gripped it in his hand and slashed at Ling Han. Sword light instantly surged out, transforming into a huge black snake that opened its mouth and bit at Ling Han. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.